Hello everyone, welcome back. Get comfortable, relax, and enjoy today's exciting fanfic. Now, let's begin part 1. Naruto Uzumaki was standing at the gates of Konoha. It was almost midnight and was thinking about everything that had happened and what he could do now. His choices being he could stay in Konoha and hope things would get better, or he could leave the village that has been causing him nothing but frustration and grief. Now you might be wondering what caused the blonde shinobi to end up at this point in his life. Well, it all started a couple months ago. For the first time in his life, Naruto was truly happy. The villagers no longer hated him, they saw him as a hero. In fact, he was one of the top ninja in the village despite only being 15. The Sound Village and the Akatsuki were gone and defeated, and he finally had his pink-haired angel. It might have taken him over 10 years, but he finally had Sakura. "Hey Naruto!" Someone yelled out. Naruto turned around to see Sakura running up to him. "Hey Sakura-chan, what's up?" He gave her a fox smile. "We just got a report that Sasuke was seen near the Fire Country border, let's go." She yelled excited. They both rushed out of the village to get him before he got away again. When they arrived back in the village late at night with their mission completed, they were both overjoyed that they finally had Sasuke back. 2 days after the retrieval mission, Naruto was called into Tsunade's office after being requested for a mission. "Naruto, I think you're ready for your first solo S-rank mission, and it should take about a month. Do you accept?" Tsunade asked him. He happily accepted the mission and went to go pack. Then he stopped by Sakura's house to say goodbye. He thought everything would be okay, but he didn't know just how wrong he was. A month later. Finally done, it feels great to be back home, Naruto said to himself as he ran all the way to the Hokage's office and handed in his mission report. "Did you need anything else, Ba-chan?" Naruto asked, grinning. "Don't call me that," Tsunade yelled at him. When she calmed down, she dismissed him. "Well, I'm gonna go tell Sakura-chan that I'm back now, so bye." As he went to leave, she stopped him for a second. "Naruto, wait," she yelled out to him, standing up. He turned and looked at her. "Yes?" he asked, looking at her. She stopped for a second and then sat back down. "Nothing, never mind." Naruto looked at her confused, then rushed out. Jiraiya appeared next to her. "Why didn't you tell him?" he asked his old teammate. Tsunade sighed and told him, "Because he would have never believed me, he needs to see for himself." Naruto was looking around the village for Sakura, unable to find her. "Well, there is one place I haven't checked, but why would she be there?" he thought to himself, heading towards the Uchiha district. When he arrived at Sasuke's house, he was assaulted with the sound of people being intimate. His heart froze for a moment. She wouldn't. He hoped. It was just some girl Sasuke had picked up off the street. That's when he heard it. "Oh Sasuke, faster, harder Sasuke." He heard Sakura yell. His heart broke into a million pieces when he heard her. He turned to leave and he left a note for them. "Sakura, I know what you've done and I hope you're happy. I guess you finally got your dream." From Naruto. He quickly left the house with the pink ring he had been planning to give Sakura. He headed to a nearby bar and got drunk for the first time in his life. Now you might be thinking that couldn't have pushed Naruto to where he is now, but the sad thing was the same thing happened 9 more times. Each time it caused him to drink more and take higher risk missions. After his heartbreaking revelation with Sakura, it became even worse when she told him coldly that they should just be friends. She wasn't, however, expecting his response. He looked down and quietly whispered, "You bitch." The next thing she knew, she was punched in her cheekbone hard, then she woke up in a hospital weeks later, in casts. After Sakura, Ino was his beautiful flower girl. He got to know her better when he went to go get flowers at her family's flower shop for the third. They became close friends, then lovers. When Naruto left on another diplomat mission, this time for 2 weeks, when he came back the same thing happened, except this time Ino was with Shikamaru. Naruto left the same note, and left with another ring. Every time he left the same thing happened. Next was Tenten and Neji, then Hinata and Kiba. Naruto thought he would have better luck with some of the older women, thinking experience would make it to where they would know better than to cheat on him. Boy, was he wrong. First it was Kurenai and Asuma, Shizune and Yumoto, Anko and Aruka, Hana and Kakashi, and then Tsunade and Jiraiya. The last one, however, hit him the hardest. Ayame, the girl he thought he could always trust. The one he had known since he was a kid, he thought she would have stayed faithful, but he was wrong. Flashback. Naruto had just gotten back from a 2-month mission and left his report with Tsunade. He no longer called her Tsunade him or even Ba-chan once he found out that she had been cheating on him. He walked home and saw Ayame there waiting for him. She ran up to him. "Hi Naruto-kun." She screamed as she tried to hug him. Naruto sidestepped her and walked into their house. Ayame looked confused. "Naruto." She called out to him and then followed him inside. He didn't say anything as he took off his armor and sat down on his couch thinking on his next action. She followed him and stood while he sat down. He looked at her and asked, "How long?" She looked even more confused and asked him, "What do you mean Naruto-kun?" He threw the empty bottle at her, making it shatter and break to the left of her. "Don't call me that." He looked at her again and asked, "How long have you been?" Ayame had a surprised look on her face. Naruto looked at her and continued, "Oh, you didn't think I would notice? Please, I could smell him on you a mile away." Ayame suddenly looked sad and started crying. "Please Naruto, it's not like that." Naruto got up and started yelling, "Please, you're just like every other girl I've dated, a liar. Now get thee out of my house, I'll send you your things tomorrow." She didn't move from her spot. "I said get the my house." This time he added killing intent. She ran out of the room that time. He sniffed the air again. "Shit." Naruto got up and saw Ayame by the front door. He handed her a couple 100,000 ryo. "What's this for?" she asked. "For the baby, and tell Choji that I hope he knows what he was getting into." He then slammed the door in her face. He sat down and started thinking, feeling the 10 rings in his pocket. He also never went to Ichiraku's when he knew Ayame was going to be there. Flashback end. After that, he always carried the 10 rings around with him, and if anyone said anything negative about the rings or about him, he responded by pinning them into the nearest wall, daring them to say more. He hated more and took more dangerous missions. The only thing he got less of was sleep, considering that every time he fell asleep he only had dreams about the people he hated. Then one day, as he came back from a double S-class mission and went to ask for another one, he was surprised. In the room were all the girls including Tsunade sitting in a circle. Naruto took deep breaths to remain calm and then spoke, "What's this all about?" Tsunade spoke directly to Naruto, "Naruto, please take a seat." He did, just sitting in between Sakura and Ayame, the ones that hurt him the most. Tsunade then spoke again, "Naruto, we're worried about you. You barely sleep, you won't talk to anyone, and you're running yourself ragged with all these missions." Tsunade finished. He just sat there unfazed by their looks of concern, which he found funny as they didn't give a shit before, and replied, "Thanks for the concern, can I have that double S-class mission now?" Tsunade got annoyed and looked at Naruto, then told him, "Naruto, grow up and be a man. Face the facts, and stop drowning yourself in misery." With all the control over his anger he had acquired over the years, Naruto calmly got out of his seat and threw his chair at the wall, the others watching it shatter to pieces. He then turned and looked at all the girls. "Who the air you to tell me how to be a man? I have grown up, Tsunade, and I've seen all of you for what you are. Lying, backstabbing, cheating bitches. And I've already faced the fact that I was cheated on by every single one of you, and I was betrayed by all of you. I was just a replacement for them." He then pulled the rings out of his pockets and showed them to the girls. "Do you know what these were supposed to be for? What they stood for? I was going to ask each and every one of you to marry me at some point in my life." He then showed them the rings one by one. Pink was for Sakura, yellow for Ino, brown for Tenten, blue for Hinata, red for Kurenai, black for Shizune, purple for Anko, white for Hana, green for Tsunade, and orange for Ayame. 10 names for 10 fingers I worked to the bone for. And every time I went to ask you to marry me, I found each and every one of you in another man's bed. He then punched a giant hole in the wall and saw every guy that stole his girls in the room next door. "How the do you guys get the balls to steal my girls right before I ask them to marry me? Also, if I ever see any of you ever again, I will kill you." Naruto then walked out the door. Nobody tried to stop him. He immediately went to a bar and got drunk for the second time in his life. A few weeks later, he packed up everything that was his in a sealing scroll, went to the Hokage's office and put everything that belonged to his mom and dad, after he had overheard Jiraiya and Tsunade talking about them and his heritage. He had taken everything from his both the Uzumaki and Namikaze estates weeks ago. He then walked to the village gates. And that's where we came in. So he can stay or leave. Naruto. He heard his name being called out by multiple people, turned around and saw his former fiancés running towards him and for once in his life decided to be selfish. He quickly replaced himself with an exploding shadow clone and when the girls were close enough made the clone flip them off with both hands and say, "Bye bitches," then it exploded, throwing them back a couple feet. His headband left behind with a slash through the village's symbol. Naruto Uzumaki was currently heading to the land of waves. He decided to take a break and sat down to concentrate, go inside his mind and talk to a certain someone. "Hey Q-chan. You awake?" He yelled outside of the cage with the seal. His prisoner, the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi looked at the blonde. "What do you want, Kit?" "I was having a nice nap." The fox then shrunk down to its human form. Now what no one knew but Naruto was that the Kyuubi was actually a female. Naruto himself just found this out a couple weeks before he had left the village. Flashback. The second time Naruto had gone to a bar and got drunk he had overdone it and once he got home, and closed the door he collapsed and fell unconscious. He then found himself in his mindscape, right outside the Kyuubi's cage. "What do you want for a ball?" he asked rudely. But when he looked into the cage he didn't see the Kyuubi, what he saw was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Her hair, which was a dark red, reached all the way down to her rear end. She looked to be a little shorter than Naruto at about 5 feet tall. Her skin had no blemishes and was a little darker than Naruto, which in his opinion made her look exotic. Her eyes were blood red with slits instead of pupils. She had an hourglass figure. Her chest looked like it could easily rival Tsunade's and defied gravity. He looked down between where her thighs meet and one more thing that he noticed, she was. Which sent him back with a nosebleed. "Who the hell are you?" he asked holding his nose. "And put some clothes on." The woman smirked and replied, "What's the matter, Kit? I would assume that you were gay, but then again if you were you wouldn't have gotten that nosebleed. So then I'm assuming you like what you see?" she asked playfully. He then thought about what she said, "Only one person calls me Kit." His eyes widened and he looked at the woman surprised, Kyuubi. The woman clapped her hands and looked at him. "Well done, Kit. It took you long enough to figure it out. I mean, who else could it be?" He then tried to reply but couldn't find the right words. "Why, you're a girl?" he asked, being the only thing going through his mind at the time. She looked at him and scoffed. "Is there a reason that is hard to believe?" she asked with a little glare hinting that he would be in trouble if he answered wrong. Seeing the look in her eyes he just shook his head. "No, but I mean why didn't you ever tell me that you were a girl? I assumed you were a guy with the way your voice was when you were big." He told her honestly. She looked at him and replied, "It was mainly because of my demon 4, but it's also because back when I was free I liked to use that voice to really scare people." She told him with a playful smirk. Naruto nodded understanding, thinking it was funny as well to an extent. "So did you want something?" he asked, trying not to stare at her body. She rolled her eyes and a beautiful kimono the same color as her eyes appeared on her. "Yes, I wanted to talk to you about the way your life has been lately. Why do you bother staying here, Kit? You'll never find love here because no one here deserves a loyal, honest person like you. Hasn't that been clear enough already, Kit?" He just stood there and tried to think of something to say to her. "Well, you have a point there. But why do you care? I mean, what's in it for you?" he asked confused. She sighed. "Well, Kit, believe it or not, I'm not as evil or bloodthirsty as most of your kind makes me out to be. I wasn't even in control of myself when I attacked your village. I'm actually someone who likes to avoid battles as much as possible." She looked down sad. "But if you still hate me for the way your life was because of me, I understand." He stood there thinking for a moment and asked her, "Then why did you attack the village?" She looked down and remembered her last day of freedom. "Well, Kid, before being sealed I used to live in a mountain big enough for me in Fire Country. And one day while I was sleeping I heard something outside my cave but didn't think much of it as I thought only someone with a death wish would attack me alone. She sighed at how arrogant she used to be, but suddenly I was woken up when someone called out to me, and when I opened my eyes, the last thing I remember seeing was someone with an orange mask with a swirl and Sharingan eyes. She looked at him with a sad look. Next thing I knew, I was in here wondering what happened. She finished her story. He sat down for a second, taking it all in. So you were being controlled by someone with the Sharingan. But is that even possible? He asked. She nodded and continued. Only one person had the power to control the Biju with the Sharingan, and that person was Madara Uchiha. She told him, watching his eyes widen. But he would have to be close to over 100 years old by then, wouldn't he? He asked her, thinking about how Madara was one of the founders of Konoha. She thought about what he said and came to a conclusion. Well, kid, he does have the immortal Sharingan, and no one else really knows what its abilities are except Madara. For all we know, it grants the owner immortality. She finished, and then she walked over to the edge of the cage standing right behind the door and continues. Kid, you might not know this, but there are people who do love you. Many of them, however, are far from where you are now. So I think the best thing to do right now is to leave this forsaken place. She told him, getting to the point. He got a look of shock on his face. How do you know there are people who care about me, even love me, not from here? He asked, confused. She looked at him lovingly, with true love in her stare, something he had never seen but thought he had, because kid, I know and can tell what a girl is feeling better than you can. I for one am someone who will always be here for you. I'm even working on something that will allow me to get out of here without killing both of us in the process. You would even get to keep all my chakra, all my power would be yours, you would be able to give me more if you ever think I need it though, the same goes for any future mates you might have. She stopped there, letting him take everything she told him in. He stared at her, trying to find any signs of deception or trickery, but he couldn't find any, so he decided to sit and think about what she had suggested to him. If I do leave like you're saying I should, won't they make me a missing nin? And where would I go? Where am I going to sleep? What about food? He ended with the questions, looking distraught. She sighed, starting to get a headache. Kit, to answer all your questions, first off, yes, they'll more than likely make you a missing nin, and S-ranked one if the council has any say in it. We'll probably go to all the places where I believe there is a mate for you, which means we would be going to the land of waves first. If you get there quick enough, I'm sure you can sleep at the old drunk's house, and they'll most likely be willing to give you food also. She finished and saw that he looked more relaxed now. He sat there and thought about his choices for what seemed like hours. He then looked up at her and replied, okay, Q-chan. I guess you're right. I never am going to find happiness here. So I'll take everything that belonged to my parents, then I'll leave in the next couple weeks, okay? He told her and waited for a response. She smiled and told him, okay, Kit, by the way, I don't think this village deserves anything from the Namikaze or Uzumaki clans. So you should take everything from both estates. You're going to need a lot of storage scrolls, and big ones too. I want you to take everything and anything that isn't attached to the ground. But if it represents the clan in any way, take it, understood? She asked him, finishing. He had started taking notes when he knew he wasn't going to remember everything she had told him, and looked at his work, then showed it to her. Is that everything you said? She took the notepad from him and overlooked what he wrote. She looked up after a couple minutes and smiled. Yes, Kit, it's exactly what I said. I guess you're a good listener when you want to be. She smiled and handed the notepad back to him. Naruto then grabbed the notepad and made sure to remember everything, then looked at Kyuubi. Well, is there anything else you needed to tell me, or is that it? He asked, getting up. She stood there thinking for a second, then replied, no, Kit, that's all for now, but if you need anything from me or need my input on something, you know how to get me. She said, getting up also. Naruto then walked over to her and surprised her with his next action. Okay, see ya later, Q-chan. He then went over to her and kissed her quickly on the cheek, then left. After he left, she stood there surprised and blushed, only being able to say 3 words, stupid blonde baka. End flashback. So what did you think of my big exit? He asked his best friend with pride. She smiled back at him. I thought it was flashy, exciting, but most importantly, those bitches got what they deserved. She replied, saying the last few words coldly. Naruto laughed a little at the response. so how far would you say until we arrive at our destination? She thought it over, probably a couple more hours if you keep going. She told him. He smiled and did his usual farewell of kissing her on the cheek. Okay, see ya later, Q-chan. He disappeared, and when he was back outside he started running again, hoping to get to his destination before the sun was down. Back in Konoha, Tsunade and the other girls were all in the hospital. They were all fine, nothing critical. The entire village found out about the girls, Naruto's leaving, and why he left. Thanks to a note in his notebook diary, he left for Konohamaru. He left and made copies of specific parts of the details and spread it around the village. Everyone who thought that Naruto was a hero now despised the girls and thought they deserved what happened to them. While some of the town who still hated Naruto for holding the Kyuubi was happy that the demon was now out of their village. The only people who bothered to visit the girls were the boyfriends. Even their own families were disappointed in them, well, excluding Sakura's mom, who was happy about what her daughter did to the demon boy. The other girls' parents were disappointed in what they did to Naruto, telling them they should have just told them the truth once he got back instead of cheating on him. A couple of the girls were slapped, and the boys were hated with the fact of what they went and did to Naruto. Tsunade and Jiraiya weren't worried about Naruto. They said that he would be back. They said that Naruto was overreacting and that the only thing that was wrong was how they broke up with Naruto and what he did to them, so the other girls were convinced that they only did one thing wrong. This in turn caused a lot of fights and arguments in the village. The girls were also hated more once it was found out they thought they did absolutely nothing wrong. Little did they know, their misfortune was only beginning. Naruto noticed that the sun was setting and it was starting to get dark. Man, I thought I had more time to get to village. Q-chan, I thought you said I would make it. Kyuubi sighed. Kid, if you would look closer, we've arrived at our destination. She then noticed something else using her ability to see through his eyes. Kid, isn't this bridge that old drunk built? Naruto stopped and looked more closely at the bridge and then saw a plaque and walked over to read it. He stood in front of the plaque and read aloud. We hereby name this monument the Great Naruto Bridge in honor of the one who gave our village strength, courage, and hope. When he was done reading it, he got a big grin on his face. I didn't think I was that big an impact on this village. Kyuubi was smiling. Of course you did, Kit. You're the one who was able to make the villagers stand up to the bandits and run them out of their town after all. He thought about it for a second and couldn't help but agree with her. I guess you have a point there. But I didn't think they'd go and name their bridge after me. He started walking into the village. Kit, once we get into a room, I want you to put up a privacy seal. He slowly nodded but asked, confused, okay, but why, Q-chan? She sighed. Just do it, I'll explain later, okay. He nodded and began running to the village. When he arrived in the village, he smelled something that in his opinion smelled like the ocean. He knew the village was surrounded by water, but this smell was coming from inside the village, not outside of it. Q-chan, do you smell that, or am I just imagining things? He asked her, confused. She smiled. Well, kid, it seems like one of the girls I told you about is in this village, she told him with a smirking in his mind. He thought for a moment, but the only female I've actually met or talked to in this village was Inari's mom, Tsunami. Q-chan, he told her, confused, which only made her sigh. I swear he is so dense and oblivious when it comes to the opposite gender, she thought to herself. Meanwhile, in the land of waves, a woman with dark blue hair was walking with her son and her father as they were heading home after shopping for groceries. She had been thinking about a certain blonde over the years. She fell in love with him when he saved her and her son from being taken as hostages when their village had been under Gato's control. She knew that she couldn't have confessed to him when they first met because she knew that at the least people would have questioned her sanity with their age difference. She tried dating men in her village to get over him and it didn't work. She always told herself that if she ever saw him again that she would admit her love to him, but what if he didn't like her because she was older? She had been thinking about him ever since he left, and was thinking about him more every day. She couldn't even look at other men the way she thought about him, so they would break it off with her when she wouldn't let out, as she put it. She was so caught up in her thoughts she didn't notice the person coming her way very fast. Look out! She heard someone yell as the last thing she saw was a yellow blur when she was knocked over. She waited to hit the ground, but instead it felt like she was being held, so she opened her eyes and what she saw made her believe she had been knocked out when she hit the ground and was dreaming. She saw Naruto, but he looked much more mature and in her opinion more handsome. She also noticed that he had made a shadow clone to catch the groceries. "Are you okay, Tsunami-chan?" he asked her concerned. She couldn't respond as she was too busy staring into his cerulean eyes. Naruto-kun. She was set down on the ground slowly, never taking her eyes off his. "Sorry about that, Tsunami-chan. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going," and he was cut off immediately when she walked over to him and planted her lips on his. He didn't do anything to reciprocate as he was too shocked. When she was done and saw the stares that her son and father were giving her, she got up and ran to their house, forgetting the groceries that Naruto had caught. All three of them stood there shocked and confused. Naruto was the one to break the silence. "What just happened?" Naruto asked with a pause. "Is that how she usually greets people, or am I just an exception?" he asked them, trying to lighten the mood. Inari and Tazuna just stared at him and then ran after Tsunami. Before Tazuna left, however, he grabbed Naruto and dragged him to their house as Naruto followed, confused. At Tazuna's house. When they all arrived at the house, they noticed that Tsunami's door was locked. "Is she taking a nap or something?" Naruto asked, looking at the Tazuna. He and Inari quickly agreed with him as they all went downstairs to get something to eat. When they sat down, Tazuna suddenly realized something and stopped what he was doing and looked at Naruto. "I just thought of something. What are you doing here anyways, Naruto?" he asked, looking at him. "We didn't send for any missions." Naruto slurped up the noodles that were in his mouth and sighed without looking up. "It's a long story. One I don't feel like repeating, so let's wait until Tsunami-chan is here too. For now, is there a room where I can rest?" Inari got up and showed Naruto to the guest room. Once Inari left, he laid all of his things down, put advanced privacy seals around the room, then went to sleep to talk to Kyuubi. Mindscape. Naruto arrived inside his mind. "Q-chan. You there?" He walked to the cage as she appeared to be concentrating hard on something. "Yay kid, I'm here. I'm just getting ready," she told him, sitting on the ground in a calm tone. He looked at her confused. "Getting ready for what?" She looked up at him after she was done. "What would you say if I found out a way to let me have a body outside without killing either of us?" Naruto had a big grin after hearing that. "You serious, Q-chan? What would I have to do? Tell me so we can get it over with," he asked, excited. She smiled at how happy he was at the thought of her being out of her cage. "Well kid, the first you would have to do is rip the bottom half of the seal off when I tell you to, and I will handle the rest, okay kid?" He nodded happily and put a hand on the seal and waited. She made sure everything was ready then. "Now kit." As soon as she told him, he ripped the seal in half and was thrust out of mind. Outside, Naruto opened his eyes and he didn't see anyone else around. "Q-chan." He looked down disappointed. "I guess it didn't work." He however spoke too soon when someone hugged him from behind. "Why do you look so sad, Naruto-kun?" he heard someone say seductively behind him. When he turned around, he was blown back by a massive nosebleed. "Whoops, sorry Naruto-kun, I guess my clothes didn't come out with me. Oh well, we can buy me some clothes later." He got up and without looking at her tossed her a jacket that was big enough to cover her up to her knees. Once she was covered, he looked at her. "It looks like it worked, Q-chan." He then thought for a moment. "But I can't go around calling you Kyuubi or Q-chan," he said, concerned. "Just call me Kiyomi," she told him, interrupting his train of thought. "Pure beauty?" he asked, thinking over her choice of a name. "You don't think I'm beautiful?" she asked, pretending to disappointed. Warning. If you don't like reading mature content, then skip to the next bolded, underlined area. I will not be held responsible for people underage reading this story. If you shouldn't be here, then leave. Naruto, however, thought her tears were real and panicked. "I didn't mean it like that." He rushed over and hugged her. "I think the name suits you perfectly." She smiled and pulled away from the hug. "Want me to show you one of the girls who care about you, Naruto-kun?" she asked him sensually. Naruto looked at her happy but didn't catch her hint. "Really? Who, Kiyomi-chan?" She leans in closer to him until their faces were only inches apart. "Me," she says, and then she leans over and kisses Naruto. Knowing this was his first kiss and also shocked from it, he did nothing for a while. Then his instincts took over and he started kissing her back. Being a little forceful, he inserted his tongue into her mouth and they battled for dominance. He started losing until he tried something desperate and moved the jacket up and started rubbing her womanhood, until she stopped fighting. She gasped and he won dominance. He then took off his shirt and pants while she took off the jacket she was wearing. She tackled him and resumed kissing him while rubbing his member through his boxers. Kiyomi-chan, he moaned from the new experience of pleasure. She took off his boxers and saw his little soldier standing at attention. Wow, he's big, might even be a little big for me. She then moved and kissed the tip before she started inserting it into her mouth, and when she had it the whole way in, started bobbing her head up and down at a fast rate. He was in heaven, but he lost it when she suppressed her gag reflex and took him deeper than blue, making his member vibrate. Kiyomi-chan, I'm coming. He then released himself into her mouth and she happily swallowed it all, not letting even a drop fall. She looked at him and smiled. I love you so much, Naruto-kun. She then noticed he was still standing. Naruto-kun, can we take the last step? She asked him, not wanting him to feel forced. Anything to make you happy, Kiyomi-chan. She smiled and got under him and they started kissing slowly while he slowly inserted himself into her. She cried out in pain once she got him all the way in. He's bigger than he looks. Naruto waited until she told him to go. Once she nodded, he started thrusting slowly at first. Stop teasing, Naruto-kun, go faster. She whined. Naruto complied and started going faster, harder, and deeper. As he went faster, he grabbed both of her and while one hand played with, the other hand massaged her. She was feeling great and was reaching her climax. She started moaning louder as she got closer. Naruto-kun, I'm going to come. She moaned out. Naruto started going faster. Me too, Kiyomi-chan. He started going faster and then they both released at the same time. He pulled out of her and laid down next to her. Naruto kissed her forehead and smiled at her. I love you, Kiyomi-chan. He pulled the red ring he owned out of his bag and gave it to her. She happily took it, and once she put it on, she noticed that Naruto had fallen asleep. I will always love you too, Naruto-kun, sleep well. She then grabbed a blanket and covered both of them, then she fell asleep with him. Back in Konoha, Tsunade and the rest of the girls were finally released from the hospital and went back to their respective houses along with their boyfriends. Some of the L boys had been disowned from their clans. Neji, Choji, Shikamaru, and Kiba, they had also lost respect from their friends who had nothing to do with Naruto's abandonment of the village, namely Lee and Shino. They both quit their teams and requested a two-cell team, stating they could no longer trust their former teammates. When the younger girls returned to their homes, however, they didn't get the welcome they had been expecting, well, most of them. Sakura's house. Sakura Haruno had just arrived at her house with her boyfriend Sasuke Uchiha, but they both had noticed it was too quiet and they could feel other people in her house while they were preparing for what they thought was an ambush. They didn't expect what had really been on the other side. It was a surprise party that Sakura's parents along with some other villagers threw, congratulating her on helping get rid of the demon. She had never felt happier from being acknowledged. Ino's house. Ino and Shikamaru had been married after Shikamaru's clan disowned him from the clan along with the other males who had been disowned from their respective clans. But when Ino arrived at her house, she hadn't been expecting her parents and other important clan members to be in front of her house. She also hadn't been expecting to be beaten by her clan and parents, who then gave her all her belongings, stating she no longer was a part of the clan and she no longer lived there, or had parents. Only one thought was going through her mind before she blacked out, being carried by Shikamaru, who had been held back while she was being beaten. What the did I do? Hinata's house. When Hinata Hyuga had arrived at her house, she was greeted by her father and her sister, who then proceeded to beat the shit out of her. Then the rest was the same of what happened to Ino, only Hinata had all her limbs temporarily disabled thanks to her former father. She slowly blacked out as Kiba quickly took her back to the hospital. Tenten's house. When Tenten arrived at her home, she noticed a couple things. Her house had been vandalized. Her items, scrolls, weapons, and other belongings were stolen. The only thing she found was a note saying she had been disowned. She then fell on her, confused. What the hell did I do to deserve this? Tsunade's office. Out of the two older females who had suffered, Tsunade was the one who had never expected how severe her consequences would have been from her actions. She had lost a lot of respect from her ninja and Anbu who had respected Naruto, the clan heads, and every civilian who had not seen Naruto as a demon. She was in serious trouble. When other countries had gotten wind of everything, Konoha lost some of its allies and resources. The Sand Village's Cascade Gaara cut off all communication and trades from Konoha. The Land of Snow's Princess Koyuki also cut off all communication and stopped the technology trades she had with Konoha. She lost trade from the Land of Waves, and more places that had prospered and had better lives because of Naruto. Ayame's house. When Ayame had gotten home, she saw her father in front of their house with a suitcase and a look of disappointment. He quickly told her she was no longer allowed in his house, she was no longer allowed to work at the stand, and before she asked said he already had someone else to help him with the stand. Pissed but depressed at the same time, Ayame grabbed the suitcase and left. Naruto Uzumaki woke up feeling a weight on his chest and was still half asleep. Wow, that was some dream. When he took more notice to the weight on his chest, he was confused. What is this? With his eyes still closed, he wrapped his hand around what was on him and felt something soft. What's this? He squeezed more and didn't stop until he heard a moan. Naruto-kun, not so rough, if you want to go again, just ask. He immediately stopped what he was doing and opened his eyes to see a girl in front of him. Q-chan, he said confused. She rolled her eyes. Remember Naruto-kun, we gave me a new name so people wouldn't get scared of me and know who I am. My name is Kiyomi, not Kyuubi and not Q-chan. She said, smiling warmly at him. He thinks of his current situation, ease in for a second. So, last night wasn't a dream? He asks, still half asleep, while she nods, then hugs him. No, Naruto-kun, it wasn't a dream. I am and will always be here for you. She tells him with a loving smile. He smiles and hugs her back. I'm so glad it wasn't a dream. After she had reassured him that he hadn't been dreaming, they took turns with the shower. But while Naruto was getting dressed after he had taken his shower, he heard the bathroom door open and was shocked to see Kyuubi and was thrown back from another nosebleed. Why aren't you wearing anything, Kiyomi-chan? She looked down and then looked back at him, smiling. What's wrong, Kit? It's not like it's anything you haven't seen before, she said before making a kimono appear on her using her chakra. When they had finished getting ready, they both headed downstairs smelling breakfast. When they walked downstairs, Naruto was greeted by Inari and Tazuna, who didn't look up from their food. Tsunami was currently making breakfast for Naruto and hadn't seen the two new people yet. Tazuna was the first person to notice the new person in the house. Hey Gaki, who's this and why is she in the house? Better yet, when did she get here? He asked him, confused. Naruto decided that the truth would be better. Okay, now that you're all here. As you three are some of the only people left in the world that I can trust, I'll tell you everything that has happened in my life, every last detail. He paused for a moment. I just hope you don't betray my trust like everyone in my former village did. The three flinched at hearing that, wondering what happened, but didn't say anything or ask about what he was talking about. Kiyomi and Tsunami sat down with Inari and Tazuna. Hours later, when Naruto was finally done telling his life story, at least up to the point of why he left the village, he was met with two different reactions from the three in front of him. Tazuna and Inari looked pissed and about ready to kill someone, while Tsunami was in tears. Naruto waited and then he told them how Kiyomi was the Kyuubi but relaxed once he assured them she wouldn't hurt them. Well, when I was coming close to the village, I smelled something that smelled like the ocean, and according to Kiyomi-chan, a girl who loves me is in this village. Once he said this, Kiyomi looked at Tsunami, who just blushed. Everyone except Naruto caught this. Well, you have any idea who you're looking for, Naruto? Tazuna asks, taking peeks at his daughter out of the corner of his eye. Naruto just shrugged. I honestly don't know, but Kiyomi-chan said that all the girls are people I have met and interacted with before and that they all fell in love with me after I helped them. Tazuna looked at his daughter once again. Well, you helped everyone in this village when Gato was here. Did they have to know you personally or be a certain age? Naruto simply thought on these questions, then looked at Kiyomi. Kiyomi-chan, I don't know how to answer these questions, do you know? Kiyomi froze for a second. No. They can be of any age, although they do have to know you personally. They can't just know about you, she answered him calmly. At this, Tazuna was really getting suspicious. Kiyomi then looked over to Tsunami. Now Tsunami, why don't you tell the rest of us why you acted the way you did yesterday? Once being questioned about her behavior, she started getting nervous but was pulled out of it by a hand being placed on her shoulder gently. She turned around to see Naruto smiling at her. Go ahead, Tsunami-chan, tell us what's wrong. Tsunami took a deep breath and said to everyone looking down, I know who the girl is that loves Naruto, it's me. Inari's jaw dropped and Tazuna dropped the sake bottle he had been holding and spit out what sake was left in his mouth. What? Tazuna screamed. Naruto just sat amazed that he had an older woman who loved him and that it was Tsunami of all women. Inari just sat there thinking everything over, but what about how much older you are than him, Ka-san? Inari thought. Kiyomi coughed to get everyone's attention. Once they claim each other should they choose to, she will become younger with the demon chakra being inserted into her body. She will never die unless Naruto does first. She will have an excellent immune system and will heal quickly just like Naruto-kun. She said, answering Inari's question. Tsunami eyes grew wide at this information. How much younger will I be and what will happen to my body physically? It's not like I've looked like this since I was 16. Kiyomi was able to relieve stress from this question as well. You will lose all blemishes, wrinkles and anything else you don't want. You will lose all white or gray hair you may have. You will be a little shorter, and you'll be stronger and faster. You won't really be a threat unless we properly train you, and you might be in pain at times when the chakra from you being mated to Naruto grows in your body. I don't know if you will be able to use elemental jutsu, but you should be able to use the basic stuff at least. She told Tsunami, never breaking eye contact with her. Tsunami looked at her son and father. What do you guys think? Tazuna sighed. All I really want is for you to be happy. If this is what you want, then I'm okay with it. He then smiled at her and looked at Inari. When Inari noticed that both of his family members were looking at him, he only had one thing to say. If you go through with this, does that mean Naruto will be my two-san? He asked, looking at his mom and Naruto. Naruto thought on this, looked at Kiyomi, and when she nodded he turned back to the younger boy. Yes, I will be. Inari's eyes grew from hearing this and jumped to hug them both. Then I'm okay with it. After hearing her family's opinions of her being with Naruto, she started to cry from happiness and hugged both of them. Naruto just sat there and smiled. I never would have guessed that I had left such an impression on Tsunami-chan. While he was in thought, Tazuna went up to him and placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder and snapped him out of it. When he looked up at him, he was grabbed and hugged by Tazuna and Inari. Welcome to our family, Naruto. Naruto hugged again and had a couple tears fall. His life was turning around completely and he just knew it was only going to get better. Back in Konoha, all the girls were back to being as healthy that they could be, which wasn't saying much considering how badly they had been beaten, and were with their husbands. Ayame and Hana were the only older women there because the others moved in with their husbands into their own houses, except their houses were nice and they were making more money. The rest of them had to live in the same house after being disowned. Why isn't Sakura suffering like the rest of us? Ino asked coldly to no one in particular. Hinata was the one to respond to this, because her parents are civilians who thought of Naruto as a demon, so they are proud of her and how she finally got rid of the demon that was a curse to this village. Hinata said, quoting Sakura's parents with venom in her tone. Tenten growled, well, that's bullshit. While we're here in this dirty, old house barely making enough to feed all of us, Sakura is living the same life, if not a bit better, that she had before all this happened. Hana was pissed. Me and Kiba were both disowned by our clan. So who the hell is going to take care of the clan now? I'm pretty sure my former mother isn't going to live forever. Kiba spoke up at this. Last I heard, she had a new romantic interest and they were working on producing a new heir, he told his sister without looking up. Shikamaru sighed. This has all been a drag. Ino gave him a look which clearly said, is that all you can say? Neji looked up and sighed. And with almost all our treaties and allies gone, Konoha is in big trouble. I mean, I didn't think Naruto had made that big an impact on other villages. They all sighed at this. Meanwhile, some big political leaders and powerful people were in a meeting. So how are we going to make Konoha pay for what they did to Naruto-kun? A beautiful blonde-haired priestess asked. A black-haired woman from the land of spring spoke next. We won't make the entire village suffer, but mainly the bitches that cheated on him and the ones who hurt him, even though that would leave only so many civilians. The next one to speak was a woman with very long russet red hair, and jade green eyes. Her hair covered her right eye. I say we go after the pink-haired girl first. I hear she's hasn't suffered at all besides from what Naruto did to her before he left. A former kunoichi from Kumogakure who had blonde hair was next. I agree, and she should suffer the most as she was the first girl to betray him for that traitorous Uchiha. The next girl had bright green hair and pink eyes. She wore a high white shirt, armlets, and a fishnet waistband. She also wore a slashed Takigakure forehead protector on her arm. I would have to say the only woman we can't touch is Tsunade, but I think she's already having a hard enough time as it is, wouldn't you say so, Cage? A red-haired young man looked up, his sister next to him. She also had blonde hair and she carried a giant fan on her back. She spoke up. Yes, and we have gotten many more missions now that Konoha is hated and doesn't have any more allies except us, but now we'll only help them if the problem affects both of us. Her brother was thinking to himself about how to kill the people who dared to hurt his best friend. The next woman was a beautiful redhead, who with violet eyes. We will be killing those stupid council heads Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu, right? I want to make them pay for ruining my Sochi's life, she asked with a fiery look in her eyes. The next girl there to speak was a woman who has short blue hair, and amber eyes. She also wore a large sapphire paper flower in her hair. I would like to be one to kill Danzo, as from what I have heard he was the one who made Naruto-kun's life hell and was also the one that had the execution sentence taken off the Uchiha. The last girl to speak was a younger girl with reddish-brown hair and slightly thick eyebrows and blue eyes, and had a mole under her left eye. Well, I just want to hurry up and see Naruto-kun again, she said blushing. The older redhead spoke up again. Okay, well, I have thought of a couple things we can do and it shows who it will affect. Some of them affect more than one person. We will go over who gets what and will strike soon. On a side note, while a lot of people guessed most of the girls right, some missed a couple or were confused about a few. Here is the girls in the right order they were in: Shion, Koyuki, Mei Terumi, Yugito ni, Fu, Tamari, with Gaara Kushina, Konan and last Amaru. By the way, girls that weren't showed a lot or didn't appear in the manga or anime will be OOC, as I don't know if they have an actual personality or didn't show enough. I also thought of something that might not have been clear the first time around I posted this chapter. And that is that I forgot to mention that unlike the manga in my story, that not only did Naruto not go berserk in Konoha after Hinata was hurt by pain, but that he was able to defeat the Akatsuki before the need for the great ninja war that is currently going on. So unless I'm missing any other situations, there was never a time for his generation to learn about Naruto having the Kyuubi in him. Flashback. Huh? Thinking. What? Talking. Rasengan. Jutsu. What do you want, Kit? Demon Kiyomi speaking. What do you wanna know? Demon Kiyomi thinking. Chapter 5. 3 Girls and 2 Deaths. After Naruto and Tsunami had bought Kiyomi some clothes, they had packed their things and were getting ready to get back on the road and go look for more of the girls Kiyomi had been telling Naruto about. Naruto had given Tazuna and Inari a special kunai that he told them to throw on the ground if they needed him. Tsunami had talked to them as well about taking care of themselves, and she told her father not to be getting drunk every night as she was no longer going to be around to watch him, and Inari wasn't going to either. They all said their goodbyes before stocking up on supplies, then took their leave of the village. Outside the village. So Naruto-kun, where are we heading first? Tsunami asks Naruto while walking next to him. He looks at her happily. Well, the closest place now would be Suna. I thought we could go and see my friend Gaara, considering he's the cage. So we shouldn't run into any trouble there. He says calmly while walking, turning to look at her. Kiyomi was walking happily after being sealed inside for so many years, overjoyed to be out in the fresh air again. Naruto took notice of this and smiles. Someone's happy, don't you think so, Tsunami-chan? He asks playfully. She looks over at the former sealed demon and smiles as well. Well, Naruto-kun, after being sealed up for so long, I'm not at all surprised at how she's acting. Although it's hard to believe that the most powerful Biju of all in our world is walking right next to us and that she is one of your mates as well. That reminds me, she says, pausing for a moment, embarrassed before continuing. When are you and me going to? She stops talking for a moment, and when Naruto turns to look at her, she was deep red. After realizing what she was trying to ask, Naruto looked away with a blush of his own. Well, Tsunami-chan, I thought we would wait and at the soonest do it in Suna. I just didn't like the idea of doing that in your house where Tazuna and Inari could walk in on us. He told her honestly. After thinking about it and realizing that he was right, she simply nodded and continued walking, but instead moved next to him and grabbed onto his arm while walking. Okay, Naruto-kun, I'll hold you to that. I'm sure I can wait a little longer. She said, smiling as he did the same. Kiyomi looked behind her and stared at Naruto and Tsunami. What's taking you two so long? Let's hurry up. I wanna get to Suna and relax in the hot springs. She says with her best pout while whining. Naruto smiles at her. Kiyomi-chan, Tsunami-chan isn't like you and me, she can't travel as far as fast as we can. Kiyomi stopped and thought on this. Why don't you just carry her, Naruto-kun? I'm sure she wouldn't mind, she told him, smiling. Tsunami blushed and Naruto grinned. That's a great idea, Kiyomi-chan. He then turned to Tsunami. Is there a specific way that you would like to be carried, Tsunami-chan? He asked her sincerely. She blushes and looks at him. Well, if it's not too much trouble, Naruto-kun, I was wondering if you could carry me bridal style. She tells him quietly but loud enough for him to hear. He smiles at her warmly. Sure, Tsunami-chan. He picked her up and once she got comfortable they rushed to Suna. In Suna, after Gaara and Temari had returned to their village from the meeting they were called to, they left with themselves and came back with two more girls that surprisingly enough they were both Jinchuriki just like Naruto and Gaara. Their names were Fu and Yugito. Fu held the seven-tailed horned beetle, and Yugito had the two-tailed cat. They had left their villages and had nowhere else to live at the moment, and Gaara was kind enough to offer them protection in his village. They took him up on his offer immediately and were happy to have somewhere to stay. Temari offered to show them where they would be sleeping and surprised the two when they found out they would be living in the Kazekage's house. They thought they would have been shown to an apartment or something similar. Temari decided to break the silence that was in the room. So why do you two like Naruto-kun? She asked, getting straight to the point. The other two stopped what they were doing and looked at her. Fu sighed and decided to explain it to Temari because she and Yugito fell for Naruto for the same reason and the same time. Well, you see, Temari, we both fell for Naruto-kun for the same reason. When the Akatsuki were done extracting a biju from a body, they didn't destroy it, they would simply dump the body outside and would let it rot. But Naruto-kun found our bodies in good condition, and after defeating the Akatsuki he looked at notes the Akatsuki had written and figured out how to release some of the demons without destroying the statue they were in and released them so they would go back to the demon realm, well, for 5 of them at least. For me, Yugito, and Gaara, he released our demons so they would go back to our bodies only because our bodies were in the best condition while the others were beyond recognition and decomposed for a while. So he decided to give the others proper burials before he revived me and Yugito. When we came to, we were confused and weak, so until we could take of ourselves he did. After healing serious injuries and infections he took us to a nice hotel, fed us, protected us, and gave us anything else we needed. She stopped for a moment to catch her breath and let Temari absorb everything that had been told so far. Temari nodded her head, telling Fu that she could continue. So he ended up taking care of us for a couple months, and when he told us how we were revived, both of us found it hard to believe that a younger, and what we thought to be a weaker ninja could have defeated enemies that were too much for the rest of us to even stand a chance. But when he told us why he had bothered to help us, he told us how he had been given the same cursed life as us and even had the strongest tailed demon in him. We were both shocked at this and thought this had been the only reason that he was so strong. But once he told us what his drive was and after he had told us of his life, we were both in tears by the end of it, and even though our lives were as typical for a Jinchuriki, they were nowhere as bad as his. Once he told us that we were good enough to take care of ourselves, he told us that the two of us should stay together. But before he left he gave us a special kunai and told us that if we ever needed him again to just put chakra in it and throw it on the ground. She took a breath and continued. After he was gone we both felt empty without seeing him every day and his smile cheering us up, but we knew of what the council in his village would do to us after he warned us, so we stayed away and continued our travels. After she was finished she looked at Temari. Tamari looked up and after seeing that she was finished spoke, "Wow, well, to put my response short, I know now that neither of you have bad or hurtful intentions towards Naruto-kun," she said to them, looking them in the face. Yugito was the next one to speak. "Thank you for understanding, Tamari-san," she looked at her and smiled. "So do we know where Naruto-kun is now?" Yugito asked, curious. Tamari looked up. "The last I heard, he was on his way here and will be here by tomorrow," she replied, smirking. Yugito and Fu were quiet for a moment before yelling, "What?" They then began running around frantically yelling random questions like, "What does he look like now?" and, "Do we need to go shopping?" And the one Tamari thought was the most hilarious was when they both yelled, "Do we have enough ramen?" Once she heard this one, Tamari started laughing her head off. Konoha. After each passing day, everyone started getting worse in Konoha. With their supplies becoming less and less, people were starting to fight over things like food, supplies and clothes. Stores were closing and riots went from being small to large almost every day. While the village was getting little to no missions, some people were planning on leaving the village before things got worse, while some already had left. Some of the smaller but still known clans were smiling knowing that this had all happened because of Naruto leaving, and thought it was funny to those who hadn't realized it and even funnier to those who had. The ones who were annoyed the most was the council, because they were always arguing over what the solution was to stopping the chaos and restoring the village before they went from the one of the greatest ninja villages to the lowest, now being a laughing stock in their eyes. Only a select few knew what the solution was, and some were already working on solving the problem. Sasuke, Sakura, Kiba, Hinata, Shikamaru, Ino, Neji, Tenten, Choji, Kurenai, Asuma, Shizune, Yamoto, Anko, Iruka, Hana, and Kakashi were all called to the Hokage's office. When they got there, they were greeted by Tsunade and Jiraiya. "Finally, well, now that you're all here, I'm sure you are aware as to why our village is in chaos and what we will need to do to fix it." Everyone except Sasuke and Sakura looked down ashamed, and Hinata was the one to speak up for them. "Yes, Tsunade-sama, the reason we have been put into this position was because of those of us who hurt and betrayed Naruto." Sasuke scoffed, as did Sakura as she spoke up. "What are you talking about, Hinata? It's not our fault the demon left the village because he was too childish to grow up and get over his depression. That he didn't want to face the fact that he would never have a wife because no girl would want to give birth to a demon spawn," she said coldly. Everyone looked at her shocked. Tsunade was the first to speak. "I want everyone except Sakura to leave my office for a moment." When no one moved, Tsunade grew furious. She stood up, slamming her fist into her desk, leaving a crack in it. "I said get the." Everyone rushed out of the room after that. Tsunade sat back down and hid her anger from Sakura. "Now, Sakura, would you please explain to me as to what has changed your opinion of Naruto so suddenly?" Sakura didn't think anything of the question, so she answered truthfully. "After the demon left, my parents and some other civilians threw me and Sasuke-kun a congratulations party for finally ridding our village of him, and my parents told me why they, along with other civilians, always hated him," she told her. Tsunade raised an eyebrow as her response. "And why is that, Sakura?" Tsunade asked, waiting to see if she was going to have to kill some civilians soon. "Because he is the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi, and that's why he was always so strong," she told her, and was surprised when she was suddenly grabbed by Anbu and held in place on the floor. Tsunade then called for some more Anbu, who quickly appeared and knelt in front of her. "What are your orders, Hokage-sama?" one of them asked. Tsunade looks at the one who questioned her and replied calmly, "Bring me Sakura Haruno's parents. And if you find anyone that went to a recent party held at their house, I want you to find and kill them," she said in a deadly calm tone. When they received their orders, the Anbu disappeared and were back within a couple minutes with Sakura's parents. "Some of the others are still out finding the rest of the party guests, Hokage-sama," he told her then bowed and left with the other Anbu after being dismissed. Jiraiya came in surprisingly through the door this time, and when he closed it, Tsunade had Jiraiya put up privacy seals while she never took her eyes off Sakura's parents. "So I heard that you two revealed something regarding Naruto Uzumaki to your daughter. Is this true?" she asked calmly. They looked at each other, then back to Tsunade, and Sakura's dad spoke up. "Of course we did. She asked us why we had always hated the demon, and we told her the truth, that he was the nine-tailed fox," he said, speaking calmly and not realizing what he just did. Sakura was watching the whole ordeal when she was noticed Tsunade's hands tightening into fists. Tsunade then looked at them. You have both broken the third's law and shall pay the price set for it. And the next thing Sakura saw was two kunais into the air before piercing her parents' skulls and shattering them into pieces, killing them instantly. Sakura had been covered in the blood from her parents' remains and was shocked into silence for a couple seconds before screaming at the top of her lungs, "No!" Back with Naruto. Naruto stopped for a moment and started smiling. When Kiyomi noticed this, she looked at him confused. "What are you so happy about, Naruto-kun?" He looked at her. "I don't really know, but I feel like someone just got something that was way overdue and that their suffering is far from over," he told her, still smiling. She looked at him silently. "Wow, Naruto-kun, that sounded so evil. I love it," she said, smiling as he laughed at her response. "I wonder if it was someone in that cursed village," he said with venom in his voice. "We can only hope, Naruto-kun," she tells him with an evil smirk. They were making great time and could already see Suna in the distance. "Hey Kiyomi-chan, I can see Suna. Wanna race and see who will get there first?" he asked playfully and stretching. She laughed. "Sure, Naruto-kun, even though it's obvious who will win," she told him, grinning. Naruto looked at Tsunami still in his arms. "Are you okay, Tsunami-chan?" She nodded. "Yes, Naruto-kun. Just get it over with. I wanna get there already so you can mark me as well," she said, in trying to be. It came out in a cute whining voice instead. Naruto laughed and was about to summon a toad when Kiyomi stopped him. "Wait, Naruto-kun, the frogs could tell the pervert where you are. I think you should cancel the contract or tell them what happened and see if they will cancel Jiraiya's," she told him in a serious tone. "For now I'll summon a fox and tell the cage that we'll be there in about an hour." Naruto nodded and picked Tsunami back up. Kiyomi did some hand seals quickly when a small light red four-tailed fox appeared in a puff of smoke. "Kyuubi-sama. You're alive." The little fox started jumping around happily, until Kiyomi grabbed it and made her calm down. "Yes, I am. I'll explain later, but right now I need you to go that village over there, find the leader and tell him that Naruto Uzumaki and friends will be arriving shortly, okay?" she told her in a tone that calmed her down. She bowed and rushed to the village in speeds that would make Guy jealous. Naruto looked amazed at the little fox's speed before snapping out of his trance when he noticed that Kiyomi had gotten a head start. "Hey, no fair," he yelled before rushing after her. After he caught up with her, they were evenly matched and were both laughing happily while running. With what seemed like infinite stamina, they made it to the village in 20 minutes, and Naruto would have won had he not been jumped by two yellow and a green blur. All he heard before he had been jumped was 3 happy cries of, "Naruto-kun." Luckily, before he had hit the ground, he had made a shadow clone and threw Tsunami at it to keep her out of harm. When he was jumped, he was instantly smothered by what seemed like 6 extremely soft pillows. "Hello, Tamari-chan, Yugito-chan, Fu-chan," he said while smiling, knowing exactly who had jumped him. He was, however, surprised when instead of getting a hello from them, he received 3 extremely enjoyable, long kisses from each girl. When they were all finished, he sat there with the biggest grin on his face. "That was awesome," he said while looking at each of the girls. "So ladies, as much as I love this welcome party, I think we should make our way to the cage's office, because I need to have a chat with him," he said, getting up and still smiling. He got 5 replies that each said, "Hi Naruto-kun." So anyone else pissed off that they killed Neji? I mean, yay, there's finally some solid Naruhina. Still found it awesome that she slapped him, but still I didn't think anyone from the younger generation would get killed. Although it wouldn't bother me as much if Sasuke and Sakura were killed. Naruto was heading towards the cage's building with Kiyomi, Tsunami, Tamari, Yugito, and Fu behind him. "So when did you and Yugito get here, Fu?" Naruto asked the 2 girls while walking. Said girls did not answer his question as they were too busy sizing him up compared to the last time they saw him. He stopped and turned around to ask them again, but with them in their own worlds they didn't notice him stop. So they walked right into him, knocking him down with them on him. He looked at the 2 of them with a grin. "What could the 2 of you be thinking about that has you so out of it?" The 2 girls blushed and looked at each other, then replied, "It's nothing, Naruto-kun," they both replied, and then Fu continued, "We were just thinking about different things and thinking about things from the past, Naruto-kun." she said quietly but loud enough for him to hear. He didn't think anything of it, so he just nodded his head. Okay girls, but for now can you keep your heads out of the clouds? He asked them kindly. The girls blushed at seeing his smile. Okay Naruto-kun, they both replied and walked next to him, and both girls grabbed a different arm and led him to the Casecage's office. Temari, Kiyomi, and Tsunami watched the two female Jinchuriki pissed that it seemed like they were trying to keep Naruto to themselves and kept following them, planning on ways to stop them from hogging him. What do those two think they're doing hogging Naruto-kun like that? When we get privacy I'm going to talk to them about how to share. Kiyomi thought to herself smirking. What are those two doing? I thought we had agreed no hogging. Temari thought to herself pissed. Tsunami on the other hand was trying to remain calm. It's okay Naruto-kun already said that he was letting me have first dibs once we got here and he never breaks his promises. When they finally arrived Naruto smiled when he saw his old friend. Hey Gaara, how've you been? He asked happily. The red-haired Casecage looked up at his friend. Hello Naruto, so you've finally arrived. So how long will you and are you and your company staying here in the sand? Gaara asked him looking at the two girls that were with Naruto. By the way, in case they haven't told you, Yugito and Fu wish to accompany you once you leave. He told Naruto, getting straight to the point, while said girls started blushing. Naruto looked at them and smiled. Okay Gaara, by the way, is there somewhere we can rest? We're really tired and have some things that need to be done and things that need to be discussed before we leave. Naruto told him smiling. Four of the girls however took this as a sign that they could do what they wanted to their Naruto-kun now. Tsunami was the first to latch onto him. Oh Naruto-kun, don't forget what you promised me, she told him while smiling at him. Naruto simply blushed and nodded. Hi. Yugito and Fu were next to move. What on earth could you have promised that would make you blush Naruto-kun? They both said seductively. Naruto was chuckling sheepishly while being surrounded when Gaara suddenly popped up next to Naruto with some keys in hand. He spoke up once Naruto noticed him. Here are the keys to a hotel that I reserved for you and your guests Naruto. He held them out when Naruto quickly grabbed them and the next thing anyone saw was a cloud of dust. Everyone except Gaara and Temari were the only ones left in the room. I don't know whether to feel sorry for him or jealous. Gaara said to his sister, by the way Temari, were you going to go with them? I've known for a while now that you have feelings for Naruto. He told her as Temari stood there thinking about what to do before taking off after the others. Naruto was currently being carried by Kiyomi and Fu while Yugito was leading them to the hotel while carrying Tsunami. Naruto gave a sigh. Girls, is this really necessary? I can walk on my own after all. He told them, saying it loud enough for them to hear. Kiyomi was the one to answer him. Of course this is necessary Naruto-kun. We need to get to the hotel as soon as possible and we don't need you getting distracted and running off somewhere. She told him, not looking up or stopping while talking to him. Fu looked at Kiyomi. So is there going to be a specific order or are we going to discuss it when we get there? She asked her while they ran. Tsunami heard this and looked behind her at the two. Naruto-kun already promised me that as soon as we got into a hotel that I would be the next person to be mated to him, she told them. Yugito spoke up next, and Fu and I already decided that she would go first, then me. Kiyomi looked at the other girls. Well, considering I've already went, I'll let everyone else go and then I'll go last. When they had all decided the order, they all had a smile that made him scared but eager at the same time when thinking about what they were smiling about. After being carried for what seemed like forever for Naruto, he finally heard Yugito yell, "We're here." He looked up and saw where they would be staying and the only thing he could think of to say was, "Whoa." The hotel they were staying at in Naruto's opinion looked like somewhere only people of high status or royalty would be able to afford to stay at. It was at least 30 stories high. It looked like the walls were made of strong durable materials and the windows looked like it would be able to withstand many weapons. The inside was even more amazing than the outside. It looked like it would have cost millions to be able to buy everything that was inside. Not going into detail because I wouldn't know how else to explain a hotel in this kind of area without making it too advanced. The girls had finally set Naruto down, but this time grabbed his arms and dragged him to their room. They were amazed at how their room looked. Wow, Gaara really is spoiling us, Naruto said to no one in particular. Then next things he heard was whispering, footsteps, and finally the door closing. When he turned around, Tsunami was facing the door. Now it's time you fulfilled your promise, Naruto-kun, she said as she turned around and walked over to him seductively. Start, yes, there's 4 new girls. Tsunami. She slowly started undressing on the way to him and noticed he was surprised at how she was acting and the way her figure looked after all her years. You like what you see, Naruto-kun? She asked him sensually, and he nodded yes dumbly. She finally got down to her bra and underwear and was smiling while she walked over to him and pushed him onto the bed and started kissing him and started to take off his clothes while she was kissing him. Naruto, after getting over his shock, started to kiss back and took his pants and underwear off. Tsunami took notice of Naruto's that it was already fully erect. Kami, he's huge, I think I'm going to enjoy this. She took off her bra and panties and Naruto flipped Tsunami over and switched their positions and started to tease her while she moaned and stopped him for a second. She looked him in the eyes. Please Naruto-kun, no teasing, I want it in me now. She then wrapped her legs around his waist and pulled him closer to her. He listened to her request and put his in her moist folds. They started going faster and Tsunami pulled Naruto's head closer to her. Faster Naruto-kun, faster. She screamed in between her moans. Naruto obliged and started to increase his speed and became more forceful. She was enjoying every moment of making love to Naruto and was feeling close to her climax after not having for so long. Naruto-kun, I'm almost done. Naruto was also on his way to his first climax of the night and sped up even more. I'm coming, Tsunami-chan. Naruto screamed. Me too, Naruto-kun. They stopped and moaned as they both released at the same time. Naruto cleaned himself up and left a note for Tsunami. He then took the extra room key and left but made sure the door was secure. What he didn't notice was the fox-shaped mark that appeared on her neck and the red aura that was starting to surround her. Naruto had more energy to burn, so he went to the front desk and asked for 2 more rooms and made sure they surrounded Tsunami's room. Afterwards he headed to the room on the right of Tsunami's when his eyes were covered by what felt like a pair of soft hands. Naruto-kun, does this mean you're finished with Tsunami-chan? He heard a voice behind him ask, then he felt the key for the room to the left of Tsunami's get taken and heard Kiyomi's voice, I'll meet you in the room later, Naruto-kun. Then from what he could hear, she entered the room to the left and closed the door. Fu and Yugito. He was then led into the room on the right and heard the door close, and then the hands blocking his vision were removed, and when he turned around he was met with a Fu and an undressing Yugito. It took a moment for this to register in his brain, and when it did he was shocked. Fu giggled at his look and smiled. Well, Naruto-kun. Are you going to just stand there and make us wait, or are you going to come over here and give us all the pleasure we want? Fu asked him playfully while Yugito was finishing getting undressed. Naruto shook his head in disbelief once more, facing Fu. I don't recall you mentioning this. Even through his accusation he felt a smile on his face. Fu closes her eyes, pushing into him, smiling in return. Her arms wrap around Naruto's shoulders. Then he felt Yugito pressing against him from behind. Forgive me if I seem timid. I'm not sure what you want. They slowly shed his clothes, trailing kisses down his most sensitive parts. He let out a moan as Yugito pushed his shaft in and quickly pulled her to him in his sudden excitement. Fu joined the kissing and Naruto was even more overwhelmed. Soon he couldn't choose who to be with, but settled for both. In his arms he had Fu, while Yugito kissed his neck. He shivered at the touch of her lips. Fu was so eager she just placed herself onto him. Naruto was drawn off guard and laid his back against the headboard. Fu was being jostled up and down, hands supporting her from behind. Yugito then straddled him, kissing him so passionately. He brushed his thumb against her butt and gasped in pleasure, a smile crossing her lips. Fu, feeling left out, leaned forward and rubbed Yugito tenderly. Naruto chuckled coyly in the sudden transition. You already reach your extent, he mouthed. She looked in his eyes with an amused glance. Yugito was overtaken in bliss within 6 minutes of Naruto's thrusting. As each girl lay asleep in his arms he quietly slipped out of bed, stopping once dressed to kiss them gingerly on the forehead. Naruto once again showered, and once he got dressed he started heading to the room that Kiyomi was in when he was stopped, and when he turned around to see who it was he was surprised to see no other than Tamari. Naruto-kun, I need to talk to you. He only nodded. Okay Tamari-chan, what is it you need? She grabbed his arm and proceeded to lead him into another room she had rented out. Tamari-chan, what's this about? Did Somethi? He didn't get to finish his statement once Tamari started to kiss him. Start of Tamari. Taken aback, Naruto was soon lost in passion. When she pulled away, both were breathing heavily. Her cheeks then bore a rosy hue. Her next move was hesitant. Yet as she led him to the bed, she was brimming with compassion. She kissed him like no other woman had, her hands sure and eager to see what was under his clothes. His thoughts went away and his desires went into overdrive as he started to eagerly remove her clothes as well. He was surprised when she also had to remove wrappings she had put around her. I always thought a girl with her type of body would be bigger, he thought to himself. When she finally had the wrapping off her, she let out a soft moan after the feeling of her being freed from their bindings. When she opened her eyes to look at the boy she had been in love with since he rescued her little brother, she smiled when she took note of the look on his face while looking at her form. She lifted her teasingly. You like what you see, Naruto-kun? I'm all yours for the taking, so come and get me, she said, teasing him sensually, then got onto the bed and laid down on her back waiting for him. Naruto, after snapping out of his shock, threw off his boxers and rushed over to the bed to her and started to kiss her while one hand teased her tea, while the other teased one of her. They both in bliss, and after she had gotten tired of all the foreplay, stopped him. Naruto-kun, no more teasing, I need you and me now, she said while she was panting, and pulled him towards her and guided him to her entrance. He looked up at her after a thought had occurred to him. Tamari-chan, have you done anyone else? He asked her. She replied by kissing him shortly, then suddenly wrapped her legs around him and pulled him deep into her as she cries out in pain at the feeling of losing her virginity. She smiled at him with tears in her eyes and kissed him again. No, as you can see, you are my first, Naruto-kun, and I couldn't have picked a better person for this. Naruto looked down and noticed that she was indeed bleeding and realized that she was telling the truth. He smiled at her declaration and kissed her. Thank you Tamari-chan, that means a lot to me. She nodded at him to begin, and soon she felt so good and happy that she was getting closer to her limit. After several minutes, Naruto-kun, I'm going too, she said, but was stopped by him. I understand Tamari-chan, let's come together. They both released in minutes and he pulled out of her as he lay next to her until she fell asleep. End of Tamari. After he made sure she was cleaned up, covered her up, took a shower again, and walked out to go to Kiyomi's room. This was one of the best days of my life, he said with a huge grin on his face. Back in Konoha, Sakura was being held in a cell in a high-security Anbu prison. She was going over everything in her life to try and find where she went wrong and what she did to deserve all that had happened to her. The only thing that was going through her mind, however, was the murder of her parents and what had transpired afterwards. Flashback. Sakura fell down to her knees after seeing her parents executed right in front of her and the way they were killed. She looked up at the Hokage, tears in her eyes. Why did you murder my parents? Tsunade looked at her with no signs of remorse or any other emotion in her glare. They broke a law by telling you an S-class secret, and when they told you the secret that Naruto had the Kyuubi sealed in him at birth, they signed their own death warrants. She told her, then stood up. As she got up, she took notice of the Ki coming from the pink-haired banshee. I'll kill you. As she got up with a kunai in each of her hands, but was tackled by Anbu before she even got close to Tsunade and held down. Tsunade looked at her. You really must be as unstable as the Uchiha. She looked at the Anbu. I want you to seal all her chakra, make sure it's permanent as well. The Anbu nodded their heads as they got up, with Sakura wearing chakra suppressing handcuffs until they permanently sealed her chakra. End Sakura's flashback and enter regular flashback. After the Anbu were gone, she called more to come and clean up the Haruno's bodies. Once she had calmed down enough to not hit the next person that pissed her off, she called the others back in, and when they noticed when Sakura was gone, they all were trying to figure out what happened, especially when they saw the Anbu cleaning up the bodies. This time Ino was the one to ask the question, Anyo Tsunade-sama, where's Sakura? And whose bodies are the Anbu cleaning up? She asked, worried for her friend. Tsunade sat down and looked at the group of people. Sakura's parents were killed for breaking an S-class law, and Sakura has been arrested for attempting to kill me for executing her parents. She told them without any trouble getting the words out. Everyone except Sasuke gasped and became wide-eyed. Kiba spoke next. She did what? Tsunade looked at him. You heard me, Kiba. She has been arrested. She will have her chakra sealed and is being taken to a high-security Anbu prison. Everyone grew quiet after hearing this and Tsunade sighed. The only way to get things back to normal and to end the chaos that has taken over this village is to get Naruto back. Therefore I'm making an S-class mission for a team to go and retrieve him. Any volunteers? After the group did nothing for a couple seconds, Hinata, Ino, Shizune, Iruka, Kakashi, and Yamato all raised their hands volunteering for the mission. Tsunade looked at the others. Anyone else? No one else did anything. Very well, I expect you six to be ready to leave in 2 days. The six all nodded and left to get ready. Tsunade looked at the others. If any of you change your mind and wish to go, tell me, but for now you're dismissed, you may leave. They all nodded and left. Tsunade sighed and let her head rest on her desk as tears started to fall. Naruto was slowly waking up from the best nap he had ever had in his life but was confused from feeling pressure on certain parts of his body. Once he opened his eyes to see what it was, he was a little surprised to see all his girls lying on him. Fu and Temari were on his arms while Tsunami and Yugito were on his legs, and lastly Kiyomi's head was resting on his groin. He sighed and thought of what to do. When he had an idea, he quickly made a shadow and switched places with it. He then went to go make breakfast for the girls. Meanwhile, Gaara was sitting in his office finishing up his paperwork when he heard a knock on his door. Enter, he said calmly. When the door opened, he saw that it was one of his border watchers. Lord Casecage, we have spotted Konoha ninja in the desert and it looks like they're heading for us, sir, he said quickly and clearly. Gaara thought it over and asked, were you able to identify who they are or what they look like? The ninja looked down to read the names that had been written. Yes, sir, we have identified the 8 Konoha ninja to be Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, Tsunade's assistant Shizune, Iruka Yumino, Kakashi Hatake, Shino Aburame, Rock Lee, and lastly former Anbu Yamato. Gaara thought of what to do next. Send someone to retrieve Naruto Uzumaki and his guests. Also, go and tell all the guards at each gate they are not to let the Konoha ninja into the village until further notice. The guard bowed. Yes, sir. He then shushined out to fulfill his orders. Gaara relaxed and got up to open his window and look out of his window. Back with Naruto. Naruto had 2 other clones carrying food trays with him, and once they got to the room he dispersed his clone and the girls hit the bed softly and started to wake up. Naruto smiled. Good morning. I made breakfast for everyone, so time to get up and eat. 5 clones came in with tall mini tables, one for each girl. Naruto was taking second glances to some of the girls and noticed that some of their appearances had changed. Tsunami looked younger and a little shorter. Her skin was softer and a certain glow about it. Her also lost all of the sagging they used to have. Tsunami was, however, the one with the most change. The others had little change. The only thing they all had in common was the effects on their skin, their height and their. All of them got up and started eating except Yugito and Kiyomi, who simply covered their heads and refused to get up. Naruto got a playful smirk on his face and made a clone. They both slowly crept over to the 2 sleeping girls and pinched their butts playfully and got the result he wanted, which was making them both jump up and then roll off the bed. That wasn't very nice, Naruto-kun, Kiyomi said, getting up. Yugito just got up after stretching, which when she does resembles a cat, probably cause of Nibi, and starting eating. Naruto sat there smiling and relaxed. He then took a closer look at Tsunami's transformation. Tsunami-chan, have you looked in a mirror this morning? She looked puzzled at this and finished eating before she got up to go to the bathroom to look in the mirror. The others were eating while Naruto and Kiyomi were counting down in their heads, and when they both reached 0 they heard Tsunami scream with what sounded like joy before she ran back into the room and glomped Naruto. Naruto-kun, I haven't looked this way in years, she said while hugging him and squeezing his face into her. Whether she meant to do it or not was unknown. When she finally stopped, Naruto took a moment to catch his breath. But I always thought you looked beautiful, Tsunami-chan. Now you look even more beautiful, he told her honestly. She blushed at this and hugged him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. He then smiled and hugged her back. You're welcome, Tsunami-chan, he told her smiling. Once everyone was done eating, the girls took turns in the shower and were getting ready for the day. After everyone was done showering and getting dressed, the group started going over what to do for the day when a knock was heard at the door. Naruto got up to answer the door and saw that it was Asuna ninja. Naruto-san, the cage requires you and your group in his office immediately. Naruto nodded and the Suna ninja then shushined away with his task done. Naruto then walked back into the room to tell all the girls, "Girls, Gaara needs us now." They all groaned, thinking their fun day was ruined. "Come on girls, it's not all that bad." He then smirked when he had an idea. He walked over to the door and opened it. "Okay girls, here's something a little fun for you." He then walked over to Tsunami for a second, then walked back out for a second and made a shadow clone. While he took off to the cage's building carrying Tsunami, the shadow clone went back inside. "Now then, the first one to get to the tower will get a special reward from yours truly, while the rest will not." He walked out of the doorway and smiled. "See ya there." The clone then poofed away. The girls all stood there for a second before they all took one look at each other before they all rushed out one by one, starting the race. Kiyomi, feeling generous, gave all the others a head start while she closed the door. At the cage's building, Gaara was doing his paperwork waiting for Naruto and the girls when Naruto walked in, setting Tsunami down on a chair. "Hey Gaara." Gaara looked confused for a moment. "Naruto, where are the others that were with you?" Naruto looked away smiling. "Right about now they're probably all racing here." Gaara sighed and looked out the window to see what looked like 4 mini dust clouds all heading towards his building. Naruto counted down from 5 to himself, and when he finished, the door was forced open and Kiyomi jumped in gracefully with a smirk on her face while the others tried jumping in after her only to fall on each other, with Fu being on the bottom with Tamari on top of her, and lastly Yugito fell in, landing on top of the other two. "Well girls, looks like Kiyomi won." He grinned and kissed her. When he was done she was smiling. "You'll get the rest later," he whispered in her ear. She smiled and stood quietly. Gaara sighed and, "You might want to sit down for this, Naruto. I don't think you're going to like the news I've received." Naruto's smile dropped and he sat down, now serious. The girls grabbed seats and followed Naruto's example. Gaara took a moment to let them get comfortable before he gave them the news. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of Suna, the group of Konoha ninja heading to Suna were now minutes away from the sand village when they all heard, "What?" They all stopped and froze completely from the killing intent and rage that was coming from the direction of their destination. They all instantly knew who it, only reason being that they had all experienced it before firsthand. Kakashi looked at everyone before speaking. "Looks like we haven't missed him." He paused for a moment. "Everyone move out. We have to get there before they leave." They all then rushed to the village. Back in Gaara's office, they girls had all rushed to Naruto in a second to do their best to calm him down, even though honestly they were all just as pissed as him except for Tsunami, who was trying to keep her cool as she held Naruto, surprised as she had never seen him like this. "He could do a lot of unneeded damage. Can you repeat that, Gaara?" he asked, his sounding very pissed and demonic. Gaara sighed. "I said that my border patrol has spotted 6 Konoha shinobi on their way here to the village. The 8 consist of Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, Tsunade's assistant Shizune, Iruka Yumino, Kakashi Hatake, Shino Aburame, Rock Lee, and Anbu Yamato." Naruto growled and tried to calm down. Gaara looked at him. "What do you plan to do now, Naruto? Are you going to leave before they arrive or face them?" he asked his friend. Naruto got up and looked at his girls. "What do you all want to do?" The 4 girls who could fight all huddled up and discussed on what they wanted to do, and when they finally came to a decision they broke up and Kiyomi stepped forward. "Naruto-kun, we have all decided that we want to go and see what the pathetic Konoha ninja want, and if need be kick all their asses," she replied with a grin on her face. Naruto smiled at his girls, then turned around to look at Gaara. "You heard them, Gaara, but don't worry, we'll make sure that the village doesn't receive any damage." He smiled at his friend, then turned around and left. Once Naruto and the girls were gone, Gaara laughed silently to himself. "I hope those Konoha shinobi know what they're getting themselves into." With the Konoha shinobi, Kakashi and the others were stuck at the gates of the village because the guard would not let them in. "Please just let in. We are only looking for someone and we believe that they are in your village," Kakashi tried reasoning. The Suna nin sighed, getting tired of the copy nin's perseverance. "For the last time, no. I have orders not to let any Konoha ninja in for any reason. Kakashi sighed and looked to the others. I think the only thing we can do now is wait, and if we're lucky we'll see Naruto before he leaves the village. Small time skip. The Konoha shinobi waited for at least 2 hours, not noticing the 5 girls move around them, setting up different surprises and traps. When they were finally done, they all hid in nearby spots while Naruto played his part and walked out of the sand village calmly and casually. When he was finally within view of the Konoha shinobi, he acted like he didn't notice them while he walked in their direction. All of them just stared at him, seeing what he was going to do. Naruto just continued walking till he walked right past them and noticed out of the corners of his eyes that the guys all looked mad at being ignored while the girls looked sad, the first one to take action being Kakashi, who yelled out, "Naruto!" When he yelled, a number of things happened. The others in his group came out of their stupors and got up to wait for Naruto's reaction, while Naruto himself stopped in his tracks. "What do you want, Hatake?" Naruto asked coldly, making Kakashi and the others minus Lee and Shino flinch at the malice in his voice. Kakashi relaxed himself before replying, "We were sent to take you back to the village, Naruto. Please don't make us use force." Kakashi said honestly, "If we have to, we will. While you are strong, you are outnumbered 8 to 1. When he finished speaking, Naruto started chuckling before he started laughing. "While we are outnumbered, Hatake, your numbers are wrong. We are not outnumbered, as it is an even 6 to 6. When Naruto finished his sentence, all of the Konoha shinobi looked confused. "What do you mean, Naruto-K?" was all Hinata got to say before a kunai flew and cut her cheek enough to start blood seeping out. She cried out in pain, and when the others heard her, they looked to see that she had been assaulted, and so Ino and Shizune rushed to help her. When they had all turned away from Naruto to look at Hinata, when an unknown voice was heard, "Never, I repeat, never call him that again, you." All of them except Ino and Shizune turned to see another person next to Naruto. Naruto merely chuckled. "Kiyomi-chan, calm down. While I know that your reason for cutting her was good, we wouldn't want any wasted weapons now, would we?" he asked her in a playful tone. Hinata was hurt that Naruto didn't care that she had been hurt, and that he considered a weapon a waste on her as well. The others were surprised and pissed at what they heard, but also confused as to who the woman was. "Naruto, what the hell is your problem, and why are you being so cold to us?" Exclamation mark quote. Ino yelled at the other blonde, "Who the hell is this girl, and why did she hurt Hinata-chan for no reason?" Ino then demanded before cowering under the ki from Naruto and the redhead. Before he coldly replied, "First off, Ino, you don't get to demand anything from me. Secondly, she had a good reason for attacking the Hyuga. That reason being that she tried to call me something she lost the right to do so a long time ago." Hinata was now on the verge of tears, and the others were surprised but angry at the things Naruto was saying. "What happened to you, Naruto?" Shizune asked quietly to herself while patching up Hinata's cut, but was loud enough to be heard by the blonde and his girls, which in turn caused a lot of ki to be released, which exposed where the other girls were as well, putting the leaf shinobi on guard. "Whoever you are, show yourselves," Kakashi yelled. There were 3 gusts of wind followed by flashes of movement one after the other, and when the leaf shinobi opened their eyes, they were surprised to now see 4 girls guarding Naruto, while another girl was hiding behind Naruto holding his hand and talking to him. Fu, Yugito, and Kiyomi all let their demonic features show and released a stronger killing intent. "How dare you ask that question when you should already know the answer, you?" Kiyomi was now beyond pissed and ready to murder. The same being said for Fu and Yugito. "What do you mean? We didn't do anything to Naruto-kun," Shizune said, being as stupid and ignorant as Jiraiya and Tsunade, and once she was done with her sentence, she was sent flying by a powerful kick courtesy of Fu. Fu was looking down, and the leaf nin were surprised at her speed and how easily she got past the rest of them. "I guess it wasn't obvious that when we said that the Hyuga bitch couldn't call Naruto-kun by that suffix anymore. That went to all of you. Except Lee-san and Shino-san, of course," she added with a normal voice. Kakashi kept his gaze on the entire group. "Why showing favoritism to only 2 of us?" he asked, really confused. After this, Ino looked around. "Speaking of which, where are Lee and Shino?" All of them except Yamato, who was checking on Shizune, looked around to see if they could locate the 2 ninja when Yugito stepped forward. "To answer both of your questions, the only reason we treat Shino and Lee kindly is because they're the only ones who have never betrayed Naruto-kun and have never damaged physically or emotionally. And to answer your last question, When she stopped talking, she moved, and the others were shocked to see the people they looking for standing with Naruto's group. They asked to join our group, Kiyomi said with a grin. Naruto, Kiyomi, Temari, Fu, and Yugito stood in a line with Tsunami, Lee, and Shino behind them. Naruto spoke without turning around. Tsunami, go back to the village with Lee and Shino for now and wait there. He then summons a small dog-sized four-tailed fox. You take them to the village and make sure they get there safe, he told him without looking away from the leaf nin. The fox bowed. As you wish, Naruto-sama. Little fox then sped off to the village with Lee and Shino right behind him, with Tsunami being carried by Lee. Naruto then turned back to the others and looked at who they were going to have to deal with. After much thought, he came up with his plan. Fu, Yugito, you two take care of the Hyuga and Yamanaka. Temari, you can take on Yumino, and me and Kiyomi will take care of Hataki and Yamato. When he finished with his instructions, they all nodded and rushed to their opponents. Fu and Yugito versus Hinata and Ino. Yugito and Fu glared at Ino and Hinata with a glare that made them feel uneasy even if they didn't show it. You two are gonna pay for what you did to Naruto-kun, Fu said while Yugito snarled at the two kunoichi while flexing her claws. You bitches in that horrible village don't deserve to have someone like him. After all the crap you put him through. I'm surprised he didn't finish what Kiyomi started, Yugito said while Ino and Hinata cringed at the tone they were being spoken with. We're taking Naruto back to Konoha. He belongs there with us, not with all of you who probably just want him for something selfish like his name or power, Ino growled out. You took him away from us. You took away our Naruto-kun, she yelled only to freeze up when she felt Yugito's demonic chakra flare and the image of a two-tailed demon cat appeared behind Yugito. How dare you call him Naruto-kun, you don't deserve to call him that, you two-timing bitch. Fu yelled out, letting her chakra flare while Yugito started doing the same. You along with all those other and so-called friends he had in Konoha are the reason he left and broke his heart. And now, we're gonna break you for causing him so much pain. Yugito roared out and with blinding speed appeared in front of a frightened Hinata and punched her right in the gut. The sound of ribs cracking caused Hinata's eyes to widen in pain and cough up a glob of blood. Yugito then kicked her in the left side of her head and sent her skidding across the desert with Yugito going after her. Ino paled when she saw what Yugito did to Hinata. Monsters. You people are monsters, she yelled out, and Fu just scoffed at her. To you and Konoha perhaps we are monsters, but to Naruto-kun, we're angels. And unlike all of you in that village, we love him for who he is. You're not taking him back, and I'm gonna make sure you and Konoha pay for what you did to our Naruto-kun, she said as a forest green demonic energy flared from her body. Ino then charged at Fu with her fist back and punches Fu directly in the face, but is surprised as Fu just stands there not even phased. Smiling at how shocked Ino was, the Yamanaka then her other fist back, and before she could anything, Fu sunk her fist into Ino's stomach. Her eyes bulged from how strong the punch was and she coughed up saliva. Ino takes a few steps back, clutching her gut as she falls to her knees. Oh Okami, what the hell? Her fist felt like a sledgehammer. She thinks to herself and then vomits on the sand. Fu having a smirk on her face as she walks over to the coughing Ino, grabbing the girl by her blonde hair, lifting her by the roots, making her girl yell out in pain. Fu's smirk became a scowl when she suddenly headbutts the girl and drops her onto the ground, watching her fall with a thud. Fu then appears beside her as Ino clutched her broken nose in pain. Fu then stomps on Ino's chest, making her scream out in pain this time. Oh, I'm sorry, did that hurt? Because that's nothing compared to how you broke Naruto-kun's broken heart, she says and stomps on her chest even harder, making Ino's cries become louder. Temari versus Iruka. Temariz's eyes were ice cold as she glares Iruka down. You bastards have got a lot of nerve coming here and trying to take Naruto-kun away from us. All of you are the reason why he left and you still want him to go back. And it's really sad, Iruka. You're the one person who he thought of as a brother and you betrayed him by the snake, she said, making Iruka glared at her. Don't you dare call Anko-chan that, he tells her in a dangerous tone, making Temari smirk. Call her what? A whore, a tramp, oh I know what to call her. She's a cum-chugging sucker. Now I know why everyone calls her the snake whore. She probably uses her summons to relieve herself and will eventually get tired of you and dump you just like she did Naruto, she finishes in a sickly sweet voice. Iruka saw red as he starts to perform hand seals, I'll kill you. Kaden. Karyuenden. He then fires a red dragon at Tamari who smirked and pulled out a large silver fan. When it opens, Iruka notices the fan was designed red with a blue moon on it. Sorry, but I don't feel like dying yet. Futon. Dai Kamadachi. She cried out and created a powerful gust of wind that directed the fire dragon to a different side, shocking the man. You see this fan here? Naruto-kun made this for me because I was precious to him. It's called K's Megami. Not only does it augment elemental chakra like my wind-based chakra, but it doubles the power of my wind jutsu, meaning your little fireballs won't even get close to me. She says while the man looks at her in shock. Now I'm gonna cut you to ribbons with it. Futon. Kuro Ryu Tatsumaki. She cries out and then she swings her fan around in a form of dancing while the wind around her turns black. During the process it turns into a roaring dragon while coiling around Temari's form. Tamari then stopped and an evil grin appeared on her face. She then swung her fan in his direction and the black dragon headed towards Iruka. It then opened its mouth and engulfs him into its wind-based body and it started to rip the man to shreds. Iruka cried out in pain as he was slashed by invisible blades on every part of his body. Naruto and Kiyomi vs. Kakashi and Yamato. If looks could kill, then Kakashi would be dead by now. The man cringed at the glare Naruto was giving him. It reminded him of Minato when he was pissed, only worse. Now Naruto, I know you're upset with Hokage-sama and the village, but don't you think you're taking this too far? He asks, and Naruto just remained silent with his arms crossed and his father's cape fluttering in the wind. Aren't you gonna say anything, Naruto? He asks. Sorry, but I don't associate myself with those who are lower than trash, he replies in a cold tone, making the son of the White Fang flinch. Now that was harsh, Naruto. I know you're mad at me for not training you like I did Sasuke, but do not mention that traitor's name in my presence. I should have killed that arrogant fool a long time ago. Naruto says as he cracked his knuckles, making Kakashi's eyes widen. Naruto-kun, would you like to switch? Kiyomi asks and the blonde shakes his head. No. You deal with that knockoff of the Shadaime. Hatake is mine, Naruto says, and the vixen grins evilly at the nervous wood user. Okay. For a demon like me this'll be easy, she says and then vanishes, scaring Yamato, who started looking around for her. Kiyomi was standing behind him and suddenly wrapped a tail around his entire body. Kyubi, he says with a look of horror and fear on his face, and she chuckled at him. Took you long enough, you stupid monkey, she said, and then with a flick of her tail she sent him flying into the dunes and she flexed her clawed hands. Naruto chuckled as he saw what Kiyomi did and Kakashi looked at him in fear. Naruto, why you freed the Kyubi? Why? What the hell are you thinking, freeing the demon that killed my sensei? He yelled out, only to regret it when said blonde's ki increased. Shut up, Hatake. Don't you dare refer to my mate in such a manner. She has been there for me more than you, that pervert, or that old hag. And how dare you refer to my father as your sensei? As far as I'm concerned, you and the village are trash. I've been waiting to beat your weak and pathetic a long time. You are nothing but a failure. Like father, like son, he says, and Kakashi's eyes widen at the jab and narrows his eyes at the blonde while clenching his fists. You're gonna regret saying that to me, you brat, he says in a low and dangerous tone. Please, you could barely beat Zabuza back then without that eye in your skull, nor could you face Itachi. Do you want to know why? Because they were better than you, and once I'm done beating your sorry to the ground, I'm gonna rip that accursed eye out of your skull and crush it in my hand. And after that, I'm going back to Konoha and I'm gonna kill Sasuke. Naruto says. Kakashi's hand ignited with lightning covering his right hand. I will not allow you to do that. Reikiri. He yells out and charges at Naruto, who just stood there. Kakashi then thrusts his hand forward at Naruto's chest. The blonde then grabbed his lightning-covered fist, making the man's eyes widen. How? He asks, and the blonde smirks. Being a wind user does have its advantage. If you forgot, wind nullifies lightning, you idiot. Naruto then kneed Kakashi in the ribs, making the man hunch over. He then backhanded the man in the temple and sent him to the ground hard. Oh, don't keel over yet, Tem. I haven't broken every bone in your body yet. Naruto yelled as his eyes became crimson and he charged at the man. Kiyomi scowled as her body was wrapped in wood and Yamato was panting as he used his Mokuden abilities to ensnare her. You can't escape Kyuubi. My wood-based jutsu suppresses your Yukai, and once we apprehend Naruto, we'll find a way to seal you back into the boy. He said as Kiyomi's scowl became a grin. Is that so? Stupid monkey, she asked and then flexed her muscles and the wrapped wood started to strain from her strength. Yamato's eyes widened in horror and before he knew it, Kiyomi broke free of the jutsu and pieces of wood went flying into different directions. How? Was all he asked. Kiyomi dusts off her outfit and smirks at the man. You may have the Shadaime's abilities to create wood but yours isn't nearly strong enough to suppress demonic energy outside a Jinchuriki. She says and before he knew it, a red blur knocked him upside his head, sending him to the ground hard and he was rendered unconscious. Yugito was unleashing a barrage of punches and kicks on Hinata who could barely avoid them even with her Byakugan activated. Most of her Juken moves were swatted aside or avoided by the blonde girl. She tried to strike her in the head but Yugito pulled a left and right hook on the side of her jaw and then kicked Hinata in the chest and sent her flying backwards. Hinata struggled to get up and when she did she saw a large blue fireball head right towards her, turning the sand into glass and leaving a trail. She manages to dodge it but the heat from it burned her clothes and singed her skin and hair. Yugito then wrapped her hand around Hinata's face and slammed her into the ground. She then dragged Hinata across the dirt and then threw the girl. Fu held a beaten, bloody, and bruised Ino by the throat and when she saw the flying body of the female Hyuga head straight at her, she smirked and dropped Ino. Hinata crashed into her and the two were sent tumbling across the sand and both girls laid unconscious when they stopped. Yugito appeared beside Fu and wraps an arm around her shoulder. Too easy, Fu says. No kidding, Yugito replies not even tired. They looked to see Tamari knock a torn up Iruka in the head with K's Megami and said Leaf Nin was knocked out. She then dragged the unconscious man by the collar and approached the two. So where do I dump this trash? She asks and they pointed to Ino and Hinata's battered forms with grins on their faces. The wind mistress tossed Iruka next to the kunoichi and grinned with her fan resting on her shoulders. I feel better don't you? She asked the other two. Fu and Yugito nodded back and watched as Naruto dealt with Kakashi. Kiyomi then appeared with the beaten form of Yamato who was also knocked out. This stupid monkey actually thought that his knockoff version of the Shadaime Hokage's Mokuden could suppress my power, she said and tossed the man next to the others. She then chuckled evilly when she saw Naruto knocking Kakashi around like he was a genin. So the copycat is finally getting a taste of his own medicine. How ironic, she said as she saw Kakashi barely dodge a futon Rasengan and the ground shakes from the impact of the jutsu. He's gonna maim the poor bastard. She said as she licked her lips. He is so hot when he's angry, the mere thought of him being hot and pissed turns me on. She says with an ear-splitting grin on her face. Fu, Yugito, and Tamari blushed when she said that and then a grin appeared on Yugito's face. He'll probably want to relieve himself with us once this is over. Angry is said to be the best and with Naruto-kun's stamina, she stated as she shivered as does Fu and Tamari. Don't forget about his tool. We'll be lucky if he doesn't split us in half with it. Kiyomi said to them with a cheeky grin on her face and laughed when Tamari, Yugito, and Fu were sent flying backwards via large nosebleeds and hit the ground with a thud, leaving three unconscious and grinning girls with blood trailing down their noses. Kakashi was panting like crazy with cuts and bruises on his being. Naruto stood 5 feet away from his with a blank expression. How boring, I expected a better fight from you sensei. To think that you used to be an Anbu and considered to be one of the strongest ninja in Konoha. Don't make me laugh, I mean the least the old hag could have done was send Gai-san. At least he'd make me work up a sweat due to the fact that he could or can kick you're using taijutsu only. He says making Kakashi glare at Naruto. How did you get this strong? You were never this strong back in Konoha, he says only for Naruto to laugh at the man. You really are an idiot Hatake. I've always been this strong. I just held back to keep idiots like you from demanding things from me. I have more talent in my pinky than your Uchiha does in his entire body. Now then, Naruto pulled out a tri-pronged kunai and a look of horror appeared on Kakashi's face. Naruto threw the kunai and it landed near Kakashi's feet. and before Kakashi could blink, he saw a flash of red and then his body jerked back as Naruto plunged a Rasengan into his gut and sent the man flying backwards. Kakashi then hit the ground with a small crater surrounding him, and as he struggled to get up and he could only watch as Naruto approached him. Kakashi struggled to stand on his feet, and before he could try anything, a shadow clone was behind him and it put Kakashi in a stranglehold. I already told you, Hatake, I am gonna rip that eye out of your head and crush it. He says as he approaches Kakashi with his right arm stretched out and his index, thumb, and middle finger extended. Kakashi's eyes widened in horror as he struggled to get out of the clone's grip, but it was too strong. No, Naruto, you can't. This eye is the only memory I have of Obito. You can't take this from me. He cried out as Naruto placed his fingers around the man's left eye socket. Do you think I give a damn? You and the village took everything from me, and now I'm gonna take what you cherish the most, your best friend's eye. He said in a demonic tone as he pulled the eyeball out slowly. Please Naruto, I beg of you, don't do this. Kakashi begged, and Naruto had a smirk on his face. Sorry, but I'm done listening to you or anyone from that hellhole. Oh, and tell that prick Sasuke that he's next, he says, and with a yank of his arm, he pulls it backwards and ripped the Sharingan eye out of his head. Kakashi's screams of agony and pain could be heard across the desert as Naruto ripped out the eye that gave him 1,000 jutsu. The clone knocked out Kakashi, whose empty eye socket bled. Naruto stared at the bloody Sharingan eye that was in his hand. One down, one more to go, he says as the clone hoists Kakashi over his shoulder and walks with Naruto to the girl's location. Fu, Yugito, Temari, and Kiyomi saw Naruto and his clone with an unconscious Kakashi walking towards them. Naruto sees them and grins as the clone walks past them and tosses the man into the ground and disperses. Hey Naruto-kun, Yugito, Fu, and Temari said at the same time. Kiyomi sees his bloody hand and blinks. Why is your hand bloody, Naruto-kun? She asks, and Naruto holds it out in front of them and they all gasped. Naruto, you? Fu asks, and as he nodded, yep, I ripped out that bastard's eye, he says, and then closed his hand, crushing the eye like a bug. I consider this as a form of payback. Now the fool no longer knows 1,000 jutsu, he said, smirking. The three grinned and Naruto looked at the unconscious forms of the Leaf Nin. All that's left is to return the trash where it came from, and then after I need to get rid of the rest of my pent-up anger. Wanna help me with that, Tenshi's? He asks. Yes. The three says at the same time and blush while Kiyomi snickers. I'll help also, now to deal with the trash, she says as she leers at the KO. Nin. Hokage Tower. Tsunade was sipping on some sake, wondering if the team she sent out managed to get Naruto. That was when a two-tailed fox appeared with a scroll in its mouth, and then it drops the scroll and disappeared. When she then opened the scroll, she jumped back when she saw the beaten and bloody unconscious forms of Kakashi, Ino, Hinata, Iruka, Shizune, and Yamato on her desk. A note was next to them and she opened it and read it. Hey old hag, this is my last warning. Don't send any more of your ninja after me, or next time they'll come back in pieces. Enjoy the rest your life, you old bat. From Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. P.S. Just so that you know, Kakashi no longer has his special eye. Courtesy to the blonde fox, Kakashi has a message for Sasuke, and Lee and Shino say they quit. Tsunade's eyes widened in horror as she saw Kakashi's empty eye socket and slumped back into her seat. The council and the others are not going to like this at all. She then sighed and called some of her emergency medics to her office and sat back down with one thought on her mind: I need more sake. Back with Naruto and others. Naruto and his group were on the road and heading for their next stop in Kirigakure to talk to the Mizukage and see if they could get more supplies while they were there. Only problem was that they had been walking for hours and all the girls besides Kiyomi had gotten too exhausted hours ago and were now being carried by Fox Summons, and Shino and Lee were in the back, while Naruto was at the front of the group still pissed. Kiyomi, however, was tired of waiting for her reward for winning the race back in Suna. Naruto-kun, when am I getting the surprise I was promised? Kiyomi asked, playfully pouting. He stopped, looked at how the sun was setting and sighed. Okay, we'll camp here for the night. He started to set up when he was stopped by Kiyomi. Wait Naruto-kun, I have a better idea. She then went through hand signs unknown to the others before she stopped and yelled, summoning jutsu. When the smoke cleared, there were a total of 16 dog-sized six-tailed foxes that had what looked like building tools on their backs. You called us Kyubi-sama. The others except Kyubi were confused as to what she was doing. Yes, I would like all of you to build us a temporary one-leveled home with 3 bedrooms, with one being big enough for 2 males, and the other one being enough for 6 people, but also having another room connected to it big enough for 4. I would also like bathrooms to be connected to their respective rooms, she continued while the main fox took notes. I would also like a kitchen and lounging room. When she was finished, the group of foxes huddled together and went over the rooms and then ideas, but before they could run off, Kiyomi stopped them. Oh, and by the way, this goes for all of you, okay? Never call me Kyubi-sama again, call me Kiyomi-sama instead. They all bowed before they took off in different directions to get wood, as they already had their building tools. Time skip. In only a couple hours, the group of foxes were done building what Kiyomi had asked for. We have finished what you asked for, Kiyomi-sama, the leader of the group of foxes said while they were all bowing. Kiyomi looked the house over and smiled. Good work, that is all we need for now, go ahead and head back. They all nodded before going away in a puff of smoke. When they left, Kiyomi walked into the house followed by the others. Well, we better get some sleep. Lee, you and Shino take the smaller room with the 2 beds, okay? Naruto said while looking at the 2 former Leaf Shinobi who nodded before they went to their room. When Naruto and his girls went into their room, Naruto was surprised at how big their room was, and with the fact that they only had 1 bed, even though it was in his opinion the biggest bed he had ever seen in his life. As Naruto and his mates went to the bed, the blonde looked at them. So who gets to go first? He asked. I do. Fu Yugito, Tamari, and Tsunami all yelled out at the same time, but then glared at each other while Kiyomi and Naruto chuckled. Now girls, no fighting. There's plenty of me to go around. Tsunami-chan went first, then Yugito-chan and Fu-chan, and then it was Tamari, and then Kiyomi-chan was last. So now Yomi-chan gets to go first, and I still have to give her the reward she was supposed to get for beating all of you to the Cage's office, he told them. Ah, Naruto-kun, Yugito, Fu, Tamari, and Tsunami whined while they started to pout. Naruto couldn't help but laugh and gave each of them a kiss on the forehead. Don't whine, Tenshis. I'll treat you all equally, and I never break my promises, now do I? He asked them and they shook their heads. Now be good girls and head to the other room, okay? And wear something, he said, getting blushes out of all of the other girls, and they ran to the room. Kiyomi grinned but then eeped when Naruto lifted her up bridal style, and he had a look of lust in his eyes. Now Yomi-chan, it's time for you to make me happy, he says as he locks lips with her and she returns it while he leads her into their room. Scene: Naruto and Kiyomi. Naruto placed her on the bed and sat on top of her, straddling her waist. He removed his coat, flak jacket, and shirt, revealing his well-toned body. After tossing them to the side, he removed her kimono and she was wearing a red bra and panties underneath. He leaned over and started to kiss and lick her neck, getting moans out of her. He placed his hands on her and started to massage them. Oh, that feels great, Naruto-kun, she said moaning, and he leaned down and kisses her neck and makes his way down by kissing her stomach area. He stopped at her navel and started to lick and kiss it while she squirmed and giggled. He pulled down her panties and moved his hands to her legs and spread them apart. He stopped kissing her stomach and moved to her lower lips and slowly licked her with his tongue. A shiver went down her spine and she felt his tongue move up and down her lower region. Naruto-kun, stop teasing me, she whined but then gasped when his tongue entered her inner walls and started to lick her. He pushed his tongue deeper into her and started to kiss and lick her at the same time. Oh Kami, she cried out as he kept it up. Kiyomi started to get hot and her eyes widened when he hit a certain part of her anatomy. Naruto-kun, I'm gonna come. She cried out. A few seconds later she cried out in pleasure and released into his mouth. Naruto licked it up and looked at her panting form. He licked his lips and positions his member near her womanhood and thrust into her. Oh dear sweet Kami, she cried out as he thrusts into her repeatedly. Kiyomi, I'm gonna come, he says while she wraps her legs around his waist and pushes his manhood deeper into her. Yes. Come with me, Naruto-kun. Give me your seed and let me bear your kits. She cried as he felt himself getting close until. Naruto, Kiyomi. They both cried out as they came at the same time. Both lovers look at each other while they panted heavily. Now, that was great Naruto-kun, she says while he smiles at her. I know, he told her as he got off her. Let's take a shower and get cleaned off. I still have to reward our future mates. He says while she smirks and giggles when Naruto picks her up bridal style and takes them to the shower. After getting cleaned up, Naruto walked out of the shower wearing a pair of red shorts and drying his hair with a towel while Kiyomi was wearing a crimson robe and sleeping in the bed snoring lightly. Naruto smiled and walked over to her sleeping form and kissed her forehead while she let out a sigh. Sleep well, Haim, he said quietly and shushined out of their room and to Temari's room. Temari was in her room combing her wild yet smooth blonde hair with a comb and then felt a pair of arms wrap around her waist and she turned around to see a grinning Naruto. Hello my desert flower. Are you ready to be rewarded? He asks making Temari smile seductively at him. You took your time with Kiyomi Naruto-kun. She says and then kisses him on the lips and he returns it. He then moved his hands to the sash on her battle kimono and undid it, and then he removed her outfit, revealing her flawless and curved body. She wore a peach bra with matching panties which showed off her firm and plump. Naruto started to drool at the sight and she grinned. Someone likes what he sees, she said to him and then she looked down at his shorts and saw a bulge in his shorts and blushes. Seen Naruto and Temari. Said male blonde grins back. I could say the same to you Tima-chan. He says. What do ya say we put that pretty mouth of yours to UZH? He asks. Temari's response by pushing him on the bed, getting between his legs, grabbing the lace on his shorts and giggling while she undid the lace and started to pull them down slightly. She licks her lips when she saw how big his erection was. So big, she says and then starts to use her tongue and lick around it, making Naruto shiver while she strokes it with one hand. After doing that for a few minutes, she kisses the tip of his and then enters it into her mouth. Naruto moans out in pleasure while she sucked him off and pushed more of his member into her mouth. Naruto watches as she bobs her head up and down and felt a sensation coming from his manhood, and while he let out a grunt and released into Temari's mouth, his wind mistress swallowed his Sita continued to suck his while he released more into her mouth. Afterwards, Temari removed her mouth from his anatomy and licks her lips. You taste good Naruto, she says while he pulls his shorts back on and pulls her on his laps and rubs her shiver in delight. A grin appears on his face and he turns her around and places her on her hands and knees and pulls down her panties showing off her and wet womanhood. Naruto grins and places 2 fingers into her and rubs it back and forth while she moans out in pleasure. After that he removed them and licks the wet substance off his fingers. Sweet. Naruto then looks at her and a gleam appears in his eyes. Time to see if Temari is a screamer like Tsunami-chan. He says in his mind and spreads her cheeks apart and saw her final hole. He positioned the tip of his member near her rectum and poked it. Temari's eyes bulge out when she realized what he was gonna do. Naruto-kun wait. She cried out and he stopped. Something wrong Temari-chan? He asks. Please not back there. It won't fit. She asked but Naruto grinned. Relax Haim, I'll be gentle. He says as he enters the tip of his member into it and she grunts and whimpers. Okami please pull it out Naruto she started to beg but then gasped when he pushed more of his member into her backside. I want you to scream my name Temari. I want you to tell me to pump my seed into your and that you like taking it in the back, he told her while speeding up, making her bite her bottom lip. Say it, he growled, and no, she whimpered but then her eyes widened and she grabbed the sheets with her hands when he thrusts into her twice. Say it Temari, he says a little louder this time. No I won't say it. She cried but then she buried her head in a pillow and let out a muffled squeal when he starts to thrust into her repeatedly. Say it Temari. Say it or I'll you to the point where you won't be able to walk right for a month. He growled out as he increased the pace. Oh shit I can't take this. She cried while tears streamed down her face and her body jerked back and forth. Then say it. Naruto roared and she gave in. Yes Naruto-kun I like being in the back. Pump your seed into my. Please release into me. My is yours to violate until I pass out. She yelled and felt Naruto's seed enter her and the sound of Naruto grunting as he pumped more cum into her asshole. Naruto ooh. She cried out when he released more into her and she collapsed from the pain and pleasure. Both blondes were panting and Naruto removed his member from her, stroked it gently. Now that wasn't so bad, was it? He asked as he wrapped his arms around her waist and kisses her neck. No, she moaned out. Naruto then bit down on her neck, breaking the skin with his 4 canines and licks up the small drops of blood while some of his yukai enters the mating mark. He removes his canines from her neck and kisses her on the cheek. You are now my mate Tamari Hime, meaning no other man can touch you. I will treat you and the others equally and I will never hurt you in any way, shape or form. I'll treat you and my future mates like queens and spoil you rotten. He says as he caresses her stomach with his hands. She relaxed in the warmth of his arms and giggled when he trails his fingers across her well-toned stomach. I know you will, Naruto-kun, and I promise not to break your heart. You saved my brother from himself and showed him the errors of his ways, and for that I thank you, she told him and turned her head around and kisses him fully on the lips. They stop kissing each other and Naruto gives her a loving smile. Thank you, Tamari-chan. I know you'd never betray me. He says and then pulls her closer and whispers into her ear. Just wait until next time, my wind goddess. I'm gonna enjoy violating that yours. You won't be able to walk right for a long time. He said and gave it a squeeze while she squeaked. Well, now it's time for me to play with Fu-chan and Yugito-chan. I'll see you later, Tamari Hime. He says and kisses her on the forehead and then places her in her bed and shushine to their room. Tamari tries to lay back but then winces and rubs her. Damn you, Naruto, and your anatomy. I can't believe I let you do that to me, and what makes it worse, I enjoyed it. She finishes with a blush on her face and lays back on the bed and hugging a pillow to her body. Yugito and Fu's room. Naruto appeared in Yugito's and Fu's room, feels 2 pair of arms wrap around his neck, the other pair around his waist. He looked behind him to see a grinning Yugito with her hair down and wearing a purple bra with matching panties, and the same with Fu. Hey there, Foxy-kun, what took you so long? Yugito asks while Fu's hands trail around his chiseled chest and abs. Yeah, Foxy-kun, what took you? We were beginning to think you forgot about us. Fu said with a pout her face while Naruto chuckled. I would never do that to you too. How can I make this up to you, Himes? He asked them playfully. A grin appears on each of their faces and then they pinned him onto the bed. Yugito held him by his wrists and Fu slipped her hand into his shorts and strokes his manhood slowly while he groans. Fu licks her lips and pulled his shorts down, revealing his anatomy to his 2 future mates. Don't worry about making it up to us, Naruto-kun. We already have what we want in front of us. Now just relax, she says. Scene. Fu puts the head of his into her mouth and starts to move her head up and down and suck him off. Yugito frees his wrists and makes her way down also and starts to kiss and lick the parts the Fu wasn't sucking on. Oh man, and I thought Tamari was good with her mouth. He says to himself and breathes heavily when Fu uses her tongue and moves it around the lower part of his shaft. Yugito stops kissing the parts of his member and watches Fu suck him off. Naruto then releases into her mouth and she swallows his seed. Yugito trembles in excitement when she watches Fu's throat move up and down as she swallows Naruto's love juice. Fu then pauses and then gives him a long suck, making Naruto squirm and release even more into her mouth. The kunoichi from Taki pulls away from his and licks her lips. Damn, Fu, were you trying to suck him dry? Yugito asks. I can't help it if he tastes so good, she remarked and then moves his member to the female blonde's face. Your turn, she says with a grin on her face. Yugito opens her mouth and closes it around his member and started to bob her head up and down. Naruto's breathing became heavier and he released into her mouth as well. After they had their fun, Naruto created a shadow clone which appears behind Fu and wraps his arms around her waist. The clone pulls Fu closer to his body and starts to massage her slowly while she moans out in pleasure. Naruto, however, places Yugito on her stomach and pulls her panties off, and sees her wet glistening folds. Yugito trembles with excitement when he moved down started to thrust into her from behind. She cried out in pleasure as he thrusts into her womanhood while he massaged her with his strong and gentle hands. The shadow clone, after massaging Fu's, turns her around, and removes her panties. Fu had the biggest grin on her face when she saw his jackhammer, and spread her legs. Pound away, you stamina freak, she said in excitement, and the clone just grinned and thrust it into her. Fu bit down on her lip to stop from screaming out loud while the shadow clone pounded away. She then heard Yugito scream and looked to see her get pounded away also from behind. Yes. Yes, Naruto-kun, go faster. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. She cried out while Naruto grunted and went even faster. Fu's eyes widened when she was getting close also. Naruto-kun, I'm gonna come. She stated while the clone smirked. Me too, Fu-chan, let's come together. He told her, getting a nod from the girl. Okami, Okami, oh, Naruto. She screamed out. Fu-chan. He screamed out also while they came together. Yugito and the real Naruto also released into each, and for the next hour the sounds of moaning and screaming echoed through the room. Afterwards, Naruto looked at the Fu and Yugito, who were now asleep and sighing in pleasure and snuggling into his chest. Naruto smirked and substituted himself with a shadow clone. He put on a pair of black boxers and a blue robe and shushined out of the room and into Tsunami's. As he appeared, he heard the shower running and walked in. His eyes widened in shock and awe as he saw Tsunami, who was wet, and she was washing her body slowly, and then she leaned down to wash her legs, giving Naruto a sight of her firm. A glint appeared in his eyes and he had a shit-eating grin on his face. He pulled his robe and boxer off and slowly walked into the shower. Tsunami moved back up and started to wash her hair with her hands. She paused and felt a pair of strong muscular arms wrap around her and squeaked when she felt his member poke her behind. So it's shower you want, Tsunami-chan? He asks while he gropes her, making her moan. She turns around and wraps her arms around her neck, giving him a loving and seductive smile. Water dripped from her hair and down her ivory-colored skin, making her, in his opinion, look even. You look a little dirty, Naruto-kun. How's about I help clean you up? She says in a husky voice and pressed her wet body against Naruto's. Naruto presses his forehead against hers. I'd love that, Tsunami-chan, he says while his hand rubbed her, making her shiver in excitement. Scene. Naruto and Tsunami went in a lip-locking session and their tongues battled while their hands roamed each other's bodies. Tsunami moves her right hand down to Naruto's shaft and strokes his jewels. Said blonde deepened the kiss and squeezed her tightly, making her moan in his mouth. He then pinned her against the shower wall, and places both hands on her butt cheeks and picks her up. She wraps her legs around his waist and jumps a little when she feels his tool enter her. Naruto then frees his lips from her and starts to kiss and lick her neck and starts to thrust into her slowly. Tsunami gasps and rears her head back while her body moved up and down. Oh my Kami, she moaned out when Naruto increased the pace a little. He then stops for a moment, and then places her on the wet floor and continues to thrust into her. He watches her jiggle as their bodies moved back and forth. Naruto, I'm gonna come. She says. Hold it in, Tsunami-chan, I'm almost there, he told her with grunts in between words. Tsunami arched her head back and they both cry out, Naruto, Tsunami. They both cried out as they came together at the same time. Tsunami was panting slowly while Naruto helped her up and kisses her fully on the lips. You are so when you're wet, he told her. Tsunami blushes and smiles at him, and you are the greatest man to ever come into my life, Naruto-kun. You have done so much for me and my family, and now it's my turn to return the favor. I love you, Naruto, and nothing will ever change that, she told him with much love. Thank you, Tsunami-chan. Now let's get cleaned up for real this time, he says while she giggles. Fine, but I'll wash your back first, she says, and he laughs. The two of them then proceed to clean each other. Time skip. When Naruto woke up, he was not surprised at all to find each of the girls on a different limb or being as close as they could to him. He quietly made a clone and substituted himself to go outside and finally use the time he had to try and talk to the toads and see what they were going to do. He went out to a clearing that he thought was big enough for Gamabunta and quickly went through the hand signs, summoning jutsu. When he finished, he had to move back quickly to make he wasn't accidentally stepped on. Who summoned me? He heard the summon boss yell out and grinned before yelling. Hey Bunta. Long time no see. The toad turned around to see his favorite blonde. Naruto, is that you? How have you been? We were just talking about you. Naruto stopped for a second. What do you mean, we? He asked, confused. The giant toad moved until Naruto saw someone on top of his head, and when Naruto saw who it was, he froze and his anger started to boil. I mean me and Jiraiya. The toad sage jumped off of Gamabunta and landed in front of Naruto. So this is where you've been, Naruto, we've been looking for you. Now it's time to grow up, be a man and come back to the village.